We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng has promised a new era for Britain ahead of unveiling his mini-budget 9:30 this morning.
Very good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, the 23rd of September. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are the top stories this morning.
Kwasi Kwarteng will announce billions of pounds of increased spending and significant tax cuts when he delivers his mini-budget later this morning.
The previous national insurance hike, as well as the planned increase in corporation tax, are both set to be scrapped as the Chancellor attempts to reinvigorate Britain's cycle of growth.
Well, this comes as the Bank of England warns the UK could already be in recession after they raised interest rates to the highest level for 14 years to combat already sky-high inflation.
Well, as ever, and you know how to do it, you can join in any of our discussions and let us know what you are anticipating in this mini-budget, what really you care about and whether you think you're going to get it. GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Now, I don't know about you, and I don't know about you, but I, for one, am quite excited by this budget. And I've never felt excited for a budget ever before.
No.
But you just, I think, what are they going to deliver? And I know we've got to then, all the analysts will then go through and work out how it all gets paid for and what impact it's going to have long term. But you just think, surely, he's going to present something today which is going to make a difference to people.
Surely.
And that is a nice feeling.
And I know exactly what you're feeling. You do feel excited because you really hope that they've got it. How could they not get that something dramatic needs to be done to make people feel better about the coming winter? They've just got to do something dramatic and impressive. And that gives you a sense of excitement. Whether we will still feel excited at the end of the morning, who knows?
Be interested to see quite what goes on, won't it? We will have full coverage, of course, here on GB News for you throughout the morning. But as we wait for the detail, we'll go through the speculation, should we? And the Chancellor is set to make his maiden fiscal statement 9:30 this morning, and we're expecting a new package of measures to limit the impact of record energy bills and inflation on households and businesses.
Well, yes, experts say this mini-budget statement could actually not be so mini, but it could be the biggest tax-cutting fiscal event for decades, with the Chancellor expected to announce this range of tax cuts with the hope of boosting the economy and preventing a massive rise in the national debt.
Well, for more on the impending announcement, let's talk to the Deputy Digital Political Editor at the Daily Express, Dan Falvey, who's here in the studio. Good to see you this morning. So what are we expecting? I mean, realistically, what are we likely to see?
Well, as you've said, look, despite this being dubbed a mini-budget, this is massive. This is a huge intervention that we're expecting today. We've already seen in Liz Truss's first couple of weeks, and let's not forget, she's not been able to do a lot while we were in the mourning period for the Queen. We've already seen announcements on energy bills. We saw yesterday they confirmed that they're going to reverse the national insurance increase. Rishi Sunak earlier this year increased everyone's contributions on national insurance. That's going to be reversed from the 6th of November. So we know in advance already that's going ahead. What we're expecting today is to see action on corporation tax. Again, Rishi Sunak announced earlier this year that from 2023, corporation tax was going to increase. That's gone. We're expecting that to be gone today. We're expecting potentially something on stamp duty to help with the housing market.
What do you think?
Well, now, that is what we are unclear of. We're aware that something is happening. We know that the Treasury have been looking at the housing market and they want to do something to help stimulate it and help more first-time buyers. And we know they're looking at stamp duty to do that. What we're unclear of if that's going to be reducing it for first-time buyers more. We're unclear if that means increasing it for those buying second homes. But we know that there's something going to happen.
Something's going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting to see with a lot of this how much of it is targeted and how much is going to spread across the general population, because targeting is actually quite difficult and can be quite expensive, can't it? But if everyone benefits, including the better off, politically that might end up being quite difficult.
That is the other thing about this mini-budget. It's not only going to be the biggest in a number of years in terms of for its tax cuts, it's going to be the biggest in terms of probably how divisive it is. Where you're very much going to either love it or hate it. It's Marmite, this. You're either going to think, fantastic, we're cutting these taxes, it's going to help everyone, or you're going to look at it and you're going to go, there's talk about, for example, getting rid of the cap on bankers' bonuses, and some people are going to look at it and go, this is just plainly unfair. No one's going to be sat on the fence with this. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it.
Is that talk or is that an actual announcement? Because the way it's being treated by the media is as though that is definitely going to happen.
We are yet to have that confirmed. But I'd be very surprised if it didn't go ahead.
It's one of the issues behind something like bankers' bonuses. Controversial as it seems on the surface, because the rich are going to get richer with that, but it also means the rich are going to pay more income tax, they're going to spend more, they're going to get more money out into the economy, make the economy grow again.
And the reason this was introduced was because it was EU legislation, so we had no choice but to go ahead with it. The UK was never a fan of it in the first place. Now, the EU did this to try to put some restraint on the financial sector, but what actually ended up happening when they did that was that people just increased the salaries that were given to bankers in the first place. So it didn't reduce the amount of money that bankers had got. It was just given to them in a different way. So it didn't really achieve the aim that it was ever meant to.
So, I mean, that's typical of all this sort of thing, though, isn't it? It makes for a very interesting headline, but not an accurate headline.
Well, it didn't go ahead as people had planned, and therefore, in many ways, it's getting rid of the cap probably isn't going to make a big
I
difference.
mean, the truth surely is that there's just no one way to do this, is there? There's going to be, I mean, different economists are going to have completely different views on what would actually work. And we're just going to have to suck it and see, whatever they come up with, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. These are going to go through, and it will take time for us to find out if it was a success or not. You know, it's not going to be that we all wake up on Monday and go, brilliant, wasn't that fantastic? Everything's better.
It won't be like that.
You know, it's going to take us...
What about, do you think there'll be any handouts?
I don't think we're going to find any more handouts. Liz Truss was very clear in the Conservative leadership election that she wants an end to handouts. She did go with energy bills in that cap, which some have claimed as a handout of some sort. I think everyone accepted on energy something really had to be done. But she's far more willing to cut taxes than she is to just increase
the trouble
tax.
Is that's not going to work quickly for people, is it? And there's got to be something in this, surely, that's going to mean a faster solution to the heating crisis that's going to face so many people this winter.
So she would argue that she's taken action already on energy bills by capping them at more or less their current rate, and therefore these other reforms, these tax reforms, is about for the future.
What if people's mortgages suddenly go up?
Well, interestingly, Kwasi Kwarteng has written to the Bank of England to say that they need to do something quickly to get a grip on inflation and on interest rates. Rather unimpressed. We don't normally get the Chancellor writing to the Bank of England the way he has, and quite so sternly, and setting out quite clearly, look, this is your brief, get on top of it.
Yeah, interesting. Dan, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate that. Let's get more from market data lead at TradingView, David Bell, who joins us now. David, good to see you. I mean, looking at what we're expecting to see then, what is the impact likely to be on the economy?
Morning, guys. Well, I think we've got to think of this in a couple of different timeframes. And the previous guest just then was mentioning the Bank of England, and that's probably the reason as to why I'd say we have to look at it in different timeframes. I don't think this fiscal package or, fiscal changes is really anything for the short term. I think this is probably a mid-term to longer term thing, because it's really at odds with the Bank of England's policy of wanting to clamp down on inflation. I also think that it's rather symbolic. Okay, so if we look at the cap on bankers' bonuses, as you'd mentioned just before, that is, really more symbolic of cutting down on EU red tape more than anything else. But yeah, I think we have to look at it in various different timeframes here, short, mid, and long run. But I don't think it's going to be successful in the short term because of the perceptions of what interest rates are going to do to the economy over that period.
Let's look at then individual bits and pieces of it. What about stamp duty? What do you think they will announce on that?
I have no idea. It will probably be similar to Rishi's during the coronavirus pandemic. And the problem with that is that what happened was that they cut the stamp duty, but the average cost or the average gain from the cut actually was less than the average increase in house prices. So net, there was actually not really that great an effect. And then what we saw was that house prices literally just skyrocketed through the pandemic, and we're now at possibly an even worse situation than before. So was it a help? Depends on what measure you look at, which region you're looking at, but generally, no. The stamp duty cut just exacerbated the house price problem. It might be different now that interest rates and mortgage rates are increasing, which are probably the most powerful tool in the economy for cooling it if you're raising interest rates. But yeah, back then it didn't really help. So depends, basically. There's two different contexts that we've got here.
Tax burden in all of this. I mean, this was the big manifesto pledge, if you like, in Liz Truss's personal manifesto to get into number 10. I mean, that's got to happen, hasn't it? And presumably that is going to have an impact in the short term.
I think yes. However, the way that I see it, we are going into a recession, and that overrides a lot of kind of this, the ability for business activity to pick up and things like that. As interest rates are rising from record lows, and we had the record rate rise yesterday, and the highest rate in 40 years, it's going to create just a big issue where all of these, effectively cost of capital. That's what interest rate rises are. This increase in the cost of capital, increase in cooling down the economy, I think that's just going to override the fiscal side of things. Interest rates are the most powerful thing in the economy for controlling things. So, we're probably going to have to wait for the Bank of England to pivot again, which it will come to cutting rates before we see, I think, the effects of this fiscal change occur.
Many economists in today's media, in the press this morning, are saying actually we are already in a recession. Would you agree, or do you think a recession could still be avoided?
No, and it's not isolated to the UK either. I think recession's coming globally. I think we've overheated a lot over the last couple of years. And we haven't really seen the labour market start to go yet. I do think that's slowly ticking. In the US, it's not really started to go. And that's why the central bank over there, the Federal Reserve, is still hiking interest rates pretty rapidly. And it's important to note what they're doing over in the US because everything is connected to them. I think people are panicking about where the pound's going at the moment. And they're thinking, oh, God, the UK is going, down the toilet. When really it's predominantly a US dollar story because of, the way that the Federal Reserve are hiking interest rates. Yes, there's some factors of, the deficit here in the UK expanding and that kind of thing, but predominantly it's a USD story, so a US dollar story. But yeah, I think it is going to be quite the global slowdown. We are overheated pretty heavily globally. And, all central banks are pretty much hiking, apart from the Turkish central bank and Japanese central bank. So we're all kind of in the same boat.
In terms of inflation, because that's the overriding issue in all of this, and obviously the interest rates going up to try to combat inflation, but also it's worth noting, isn't it, that still high, but prices at the pumps are coming down. They are dropping significantly, and the quickest they've done in a long time at the moment. That's going to have actually quite a significant impact on inflation, isn't it?
It could do. I think with that, the whole commodities complex and energy, I think a lot still rides on Russia and Ukraine. I did see yesterday that Russia's actually looking to increase export duties on a number of their commodities. So unfortunately, that picture's not finished. We know that Russia started to mobilize as well. That situation, I think the last time I was on, I was speaking about energy and referring to the prices being reflective more of uncertainty than anything, supply and demand related. And I think that situation hasn't resolved itself yet. The prices are coming down, but I'd be very wary of them pushing back up. Hopefully they don't, of course.
Well,
we'll see, yes. Mini budget better be good, hadn't it? Thanks so much for joining us. Yeah. And of course, just a reminder, we'll be bringing you a special mini budget programme at 9 o'clock this morning.
It's interesting. What's top of your priority list for all of this?
I always think in terms of housing. I think if young people, and that's because I'm the mother of 4 of them, looking to buy, cannot even dream of getting on the housing ladder because everything is just too expensive. And every time they apply and fill in a form, rates seem to go up. Yeah. That's what I would look for movement in the housing sector to help first-time buyers at least.
Yeah.
But you see, I mean, I'm no economist, clearly, but if they could do something about stamp duty for young first-time buyers, even if they extended that to everybody, that would get the housing market moving.
You would think
Rich people would be able to afford their next big house. Yes, all right, you might say that they're not top of the priority list, but they are then vacating a house further down.
It all works down the system.
Surely it would benefit everybody. It would benefit the rich and the poor and help youngsters get on the ladder? I don't know.
I think income tax.
Yes,
in all of
because
this.
you'd see the difference in your pay packet.
You'd see the difference in your pay packet. There's so many people on very low wages who would admit it wouldn't be a huge amount because it never is. You know, when they reduce income tax, but there'll be a lot of people where it does feel better, and it would make a difference to people very quickly. So, but anyway, we shall just have to wait and see.
What are you hoping for? What are you really hoping for? What might make a difference to you and your family? Get in touch, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.uk.
6:16, let's bring you up to date with everything that's going on today. And 4 areas of Ukraine controlled by Russian forces are preparing to hold referenda on joining Russia. A move that's faced criticism from the West, of course. NATO calling on all states to reject what it calls Russia's blatant attempt at territorial conquest. The Foreign Secretary has urged countries to reject President Putin's sham referenda.
Councils are calling on the Prime Minister to honour her £13 billion pledge to plug into social care. The Local Government Association says £6 billion is urgently needed to help stabilise the market and give people the care they need. This follows the government announcement to scrap the National Insurance Levy, which would have helped pay for social care and tackle the NHS backlog.
A new survey shows that a quarter of cooks say they're now less likely to do a Sunday roast amid soaring energy costs. We'll look at that, that's quite a spread.
Wonderful.
A third say they've also stopped buying takeaways. 31% are eating out less often. Almost a fifth claim they no longer switch the oven on at all. I just think it's interesting that people say ditch the Sunday roast. More people want to ditch that than they ditch a takeaway.
I find fascinating. It's sort of like paints a whole social picture. Is if there are so many people who are simply never switching on the oven. Does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean we're just changing our style of eating? We're not having family get-togethers like Sunday lunches anymore, or are we just turning to the microwave? I thought we turned away from the microwave, but. No,
isn't it interesting?
It's too much to switch on the oven now.
Isn't it interesting though that this situation is affecting everybody, and just turning the light, make sure the lights are turned off, keeping the doors closed, and
my late father would be very proud of me now, and I never used to do it, but he always used to nag, turn the lights off. There's no need to leave that light on, and I do it now all the time. I go around the house all the time, turning the lights off. Well, I don't need.
I'm putting all the warm clothes on.
Yeah.
And all that sort of thing. Already? Oh, yeah.
Actually, well, you did send a picture to me the other day of you in your gym jams and your
big dressing gown and all the rest. Yeah, but it's got to be done. I tell you what, it did strike me though. I was going up to bed the other day and it was quite cold, but I was all wrapped up. And thinking, this reminds me of the 70s when I was little. And I just thought, it's a real feel of the 70s, of just the house being cold, but just trying to keep warm.
That's right, yes.
So where we go, we survived then,
But we're only in September.
Yeah, this is the trouble.
We've forgotten what cold is really like, I think.
Yeah.
You wait till November, and I think it might be a lot colder than just a woolly jumper will help.
This is the
Who
problem.
knows? I don't know, but yeah, it's only September still.
Be careful which radiators we turn on if you do put the heating on.
Fluffy slippers, you've got to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Woolly pom-pom hat indoors. Go for it.
Oh, really?
Well, you lose all your heat out of your toes.
Oh, you do.
Don't you? And your head.
God, bed socks.
Bed socks, fluffy slippers, pom-pom hat, indoors. What a sight.
There we go. I'm not posting any pictures of that. Now, ahead of the mini-budget later on today, the government has announced help for businesses when it comes to those crippling energy bills.
They'll be cut by around a half this winter under a government support scheme which will fix wholesale gas and electricity prices for 6 months from the 1st of October.
Well, Paul Hawkins has been finding out how one food supplier in south-west London has been dealing with the challenges of those high energy costs and inflation.
The smell is amazing in here. It smells fantastic. Show us what's going on here.
OK, so today we have a full production and we're making various products to some of our clients. You could probably smell the Thai green chicken curry at the moment.
Another busy morning at Mustard Foods. Head of HR and Facilities Adrian McCaffrey is giving us a tour.
As you can see, everyone's moving around quickly. Everyone's fully focused.
Chances are you've probably eaten one of their foods, like sauces and curries, that they supply to well-known high street restaurants, hotels and businesses.
OK, so this is the chilling and boxing area. So how the process works is once the product's sealed and labelled and placed onto the trolleys will make their way through the high care area into this area, and they'll be placed inside this large blast freeze here.
Pre-pandemic, they produced 120 tonnes of food a month. But after COVID and now inflation, that figure has roughly halved, and the company has had to adapt.
The challenging times that we've had since the pandemic and Brexit. We've had to sort of set up a retail side of the business so that we could provide our restaurant grade food to family homes. And we've set up the wholesale side of the business as well, so we can offer our products to smaller businesses, such as hotels and art galleries. So we've had to diversify ourselves a little bit.
Now the company faces increasing costs when it comes to ingredients for its food as well as energy.
It's the continuing cost of raw ingredients has always been a challenge. Look at the dairy products, you know, just look at the butters and the milk and the cheese and everything else is just soaring at the moment. But that's just to name a few. I would suggest over the last couple of years the electricity has increased around about 20%. And you know the spend is around sort of £13,000–14,000 a month just for our electricity, and the increase of the gas has gone up to sort of close to £1,000 a month.
How helpful is the new government announcement about help for businesses?
We do welcome any scheme that comes forward, so that the cap on the energy prices is going to be a welcome to us, and anything that we can do to reduce our tariff and our rates would be more so welcome. But as everybody knows, that's a 6-month project, and beyond the 6 months is where the concern's going to be in terms of what we're going to do moving forward. Yeah, so this is all our ingredient storage. Just like everybody else, if we didn't increase the cost of our products, then we just typically wouldn't survive. So we have had to increase the prices of our products, not just because of the soaring energy prices, but also the increases of the raw materials and the ingredients as well. It's obviously gone up, so that's always been a challenge.
Fail to meet that challenge and the government can wave goodbye to its strategy for growth. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
And that just shows how this mini budget is going to affect absolutely everybody, businesses and those who eat the stuff they make, you know, whether we switch on the oven to do it ourselves, whatever, it's going to affect absolutely everything. We've got a special mini budget programme, 9 o'clock this morning.
We have indeed, but we've got more to come on breakfast, of course, including the latest on the situation in Ukraine.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGiven from the Met Office. Compared with yesterday, today's looking brighter for many. There'll be some sunshine out there. Still a few showers about, but the wettest weather will be confined to the far southeast, where a cold front is currently trying to clear, but it's making slow progress. That's the front that brought some heavy rain across central areas during yesterday, and it's still bringing some wet weather, the rain having broken up into showers, but still some heavy downpours expected throughout much of the day across East Anglia and the southeast of England. A lot of cloud through southern areas as well, but brighter skies further north, a marked contrast here compared with recent days. Still some showers breaking out, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England primarily, but in between, in that sunshine, it won't feel too unpleasant. Temperatures reaching 16 to 20 Celsius. Now into the evening, and the rain continues on and off across parts of the far southeast. There could be some heavy, even thundery downpours for a time, but elsewhere, most places will see clear spells. Still some showers trickling into western shores as well as the North Sea coast. However, inland, mostly dry, clear spells and temperatures dipping into the mid to high single figures. So a fresh start to the weekend, but a bright start for many. For most, we're going to see sunny spells continuing throughout Saturday. There'll still be some showers coming into the east and the west coast, and a few developing inland across central areas during the afternoon. Away from the showers, though, there'll be some sunny spells. However, heavy rain won't be too far away. That will remain close to the far southeast, and it'll be quite breezy and cool here as well. Temperatures by and large into the mid to high teens. So a cool day expected, and then on Sunday, after a bright start, a band of heavy rain and strong winds spreads in from the north through Sunday night and into Monday, and that will introduce colder air for the start of next week.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
.28 morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, 4 Russian-occupied areas of Ukraine are preparing to hold referendums or referenda on whether to join the Russian Federation. Local Russian-installed leaders could escalate already the high tensions with the West, as the results are reportedly to be rigged in favour of annexation. Ukraine and its allies have already made it clear they will not recognise the results.
Well, let's head to Kyiv and talk to the editor-in-chief at Euromaidan Press, Ali Ashandra. Morning to you, Ali. It's good to see you once again. I mean, what do you think these referenda are going to achieve if no one is going to recognise the result?
Well, basically, it will give Russia a reason or an excuse to escalate its military aggression against Ukraine, or at least so it says. Basically, well, Ukraine and the West are not going to recognize. They are absolutely illegitimate. But the ostensible goal, as I see it, is that it is going to attempt to blackmail the West against supporting Ukraine, because President Putin has repeatedly in recent times threatened to use nuclear weapons against the West. Now, this has been happening for a very long time, and of course, nuclear blackmail has been part of Russia's rhetoric all along. But with the recent announcement of so-called referenda, he repeated these threats, saying that an attack on them will be equal to attack on Russian territory. Well, as I see it, it is just simply an attempt to pressure the West to not supply Ukraine with the weapons that it needs to win, and with the weapons that it is dependent on winning and winning back its occupied territories. So basically, it's a recognition that Russia is losing on the battlefield. And as well, as for this aspect of Russia losing on its battlefield, of course, it needs to present some results to its domestic population, because it's 7 months of this war. Russia has not achieved its declared goals. And of course, Putin needs to present some victories. So these fake referenda where the needed result is just painted by the occupation administration. Of course, this will be presented as a victory back in Russia, so that Putin maintains the support of the nationalistic and warmongering part of the population that supports his so-called special operation, that supports his war against Ukraine.
It's also almost impossible to see how these referenda could take place without causing terrible divisiveness in those regions. It would almost be too dangerous to go out and vote, wouldn't it?
Well, the Quisling official of Kherson Oblast has already announced that online voting will be taking place. So here, the Kremlin doesn't even need to try to pretend that this is something legitimate is happening. It will just be falsified online. And I mean, for many months, the collaborator officials, the Quisling officials of these occupied regions, they have been announcing these referenda, but they have not taken place because of local resistance. In the occupied territories, a formidable partisan resistance is taking ground. And in recent months, they have actually killed the collaborators that have declared their support, that have tried to organize the referenda. And so basically, partisans, they have killed them. They have set up bombs in the offices where these illegitimate plebiscites are being prepared. And they have, because of this resistance, as analysts think, they have been forced to postpone them very many times. So right now, I guess, even no semblance of legitimacy will be attempted by the Kremlin. It will just be a big show just for the cameras, for the domestic population.
Okay, Alia, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. We'll keep up to date with all of that and what happens, of course, throughout the next few days.
It's insidious, isn't it? Where he can't, bomb people into submission. He'll just try and fool everybody into thinking that's what they want.
There must be a domestic audience in Russia who are going to believe it, though. Otherwise, nobody else does. But...
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's even the front page, would you believe, of the Daily Star today, covering Ukraine, or at least the Ukraine war, and the effect it's having on young men in Russia who are doing anything to try and get out so they won't be called up.
Yeah. Just don't want to get involved in it.
That's the sort of thing that actually might make a difference.
It could. I think it's going to have to come from the inside. It's going to have to come from Russia. Anything to stop this at the moment. Loads of you getting in touch. Thank you very much indeed. Looking at the cost of living. James in Newbury says, I'm looking forward to what could be announced later on today. Hopefully some help for us who don't get any benefits.
Yeah, Chris says stamp duty is an anti-green tax. By abolishing it, they won't abolish, surely, homeowners will be more willing to move rather than commute long distance. I don't quite get that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, Chris, but maybe you're right. John says no tax cuts or national insurance cuts will benefit us as we're below the £12,500 threshold. I don't want much. I just want the Chancellor to make sure I can keep my heating on this winter as I have severe arthritis.
I think literally it's that practical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kevin says, I think they should increase the personal tax allowance. A cut in income tax is no help to pensioners and low earners.
Well, yes, that's true. But Gary says socialists don't understand that every economy needs rich people. All they want to do is punish people for having money. The rich need to be included in getting help because it's a domino effect, as with the housing market.
I do believe that it's a domino effect, that everybody gets affected in the end. But hopefully this mini-budget at 9:30 this morning will actually do something that will help people quickly.
Yes.
Archie says, did you read out Archie's?
No.
No. What about us pensioners? Tax cuts don't help us. Yes, we have the £400 and the winter fuel payment, but I feel more is needed. If nothing is announced today, what are people like me on £740 a month are going to do? That may be OK, but coming into winter, when I'll use more heating, it really isn't something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. And this is the cold, hard reality for people, isn't it? That the Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss surely are aware of now and are going to do something about it. It's going to have to be a drastic budget today. Can't believe they've tagged it as a mini budget.
No, when it's
not even an emergency budget.
No.
And
emergency budget would be better. It's not a mini budget. It's going to be huge because it's going to have to be dramatic, isn't it?
Anyway, we will be across every second of it this morning. And keep your thoughts coming through, if you would. What do you need out of this budget today? GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Well, we've got lots more to come, including all the latest from this morning's newspapers.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It's 6:38. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Just on the budget issue, John's been in touch, says, as usual, pensioners will be ignored. Well, I hope you're wrong, John, and I think you might be wrong this year.
I hope so.
Because I think
Well, I hope
pensioners are really in the sort of the vulnerable category with everything that's going on. So I think you might be wrong. Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
And lovely Anne says, hello to you too. I'm having pot roast this Sunday with a cheaper beef cut, cooked on the hob in a heavy casserole, root veg and onion red wine to improve the flavour. Delicious. Red cabbage, also cooked on the hob for a side. So there, you're not using your oven, are you?
No.
As we were saying, isn't that interesting that so many people are deciding now, that, or at least have realised that they haven't used the oven. Not for months, and they don't intend to. Too expensive.
Interesting, isn't it? Well,
Or just changing habits, don't know.
So you can have a good roast this Sunday anyway.
Sounds nice.
Very nice too. Let's go through the papers. Joining us this morning, author and academic Joanna Williams and our very own business and economics editor Liam Halligan. Good to see you both this morning. Liam, let's start with the Daily Mail, should we? Looking at the mini budget, and it's not mini at all.
Mini.
Nothing mini about Kwasi Kwarteng's fiscal statement. It's they're calling it a mini budget, of course, because a fiscal event. Because if it was a real budget, then the Office for Budget Responsibility would be putting out pesky forecasts and growth assumptions and revenue projections, which may slightly queer the message the government's trying to put out today. The message it's trying to put out, and it is loud and clear, and it has been since Liz Truss started to campaign for the Tory leadership coming into Downing Street, is biggest tax cuts for 30 years. We are going to see today a reversal of that national insurance increase. The government unusually announced that last night. We're going to see a reversal of Rishi Sunak's legislated intention to increase corporation tax from 19 to 25%. It will stay at 19. A lot of small businesses will be cock-a-hoop about that. That eases their cash flow. We may well see an income tax cut. We may well see some kind of stamp duty help, maybe an increase in that nil rate threshold for first-time buyers to help youngsters get on the property ladder. I could not agree with you more. Overall, it's a 30 billion package of tax cuts. That will be popular with lots of the public, but it won't go down well with the sometimes snooty economics policy-making establishment. A lot of people I know extremely well. They will say...
Do we really care what they think?
They will say it's... well, they have a...
Fed up with them.
They have a point. They have a point. They have a point because they will say to lower taxes, to lower tax rates when you're borrowing a lot more money, and they are borrowing a lot more money for this energy price cap. A big part of today's announcement will be detailing that energy price cap for households, the £2,500 a year cap. You're seeing sterling getting slightly weaker. You're seeing government borrowing costs going up, maybe because we are borrowing a lot. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, they're taking a big gamble on growth. If they can get growth going, build the pie, you'll get the tax revenues anyway, and everyone will forgive them.
Am I being dim here?
Never, Stephen.
No, I could well be. Because obviously the government is pushing this as an agenda. The Labour Party, we imagine, are going to oppose it, right? When we were 2008, we decided, and 10, when the Tories got in the coalition government, there was, the government said we're going to pull back on spending. We're going to, the word escapes me now.
Austerity.
Austerity.
There you go.
So there was all the austerity. And the Labour Party said at the time, no, we need to spend our way out of this. Have they just completely swapped sides?
To some extent, politics has been upended. On the other hand, interest rates are much lower now than they previously were. On the other hand, the whole world has been spending a huge amount of money because of the massive multi-billion dollar, pound, yen, rupee cost of lockdown on everybody else. Keep protecting your currency, stopping sort of national bankruptcy, making sure financial markets keep lending to you. It's a bit of an ugly contest, Stephen. You don't want to be the ugliest baby in the room. You don't want to be the country that looks the weakest. And we are...
How ugly are we compared to the others?
Oh, we know. Anne Diamond, we've got you here in the GB News corner.
Sadly, I'm nowhere near enough.
Look, our debt levels are high, but they're not particularly high compared to other European countries. Sterling has weakened, as we heard earlier, but all major currencies in the world have weakened against the dollar. When you get geopolitical strife, the dollar becomes the safe haven. All institutional investors put lots of money in the dollar to protect their wealth and the wealth of their clients. So it's not, yes, sterling is weak against the dollar, but on a trade-weighted basis compared to all our other trading partners, it's not particularly weak. Look, this is definitely a gamble. There will be huge controversy about this mini, not so mini budget, but it does strike me that if she can get growth going, Liz Truss and indeed Kwasi Kwarteng, then the currency markets will forgive us.
OK.
I mean, I agree with what you were saying, Stephen. I do think it's exciting. It feels exciting. It feels like all my entire adult life, budgets have been about, a penny here or a penny there, and not much has really changed, and kind of shrug your shoulders and think, what was that all about? Whereas it does feel like something big's happening here. And I agree, Liam, clearly it is a gamble. Clearly there's a risk. But I actually think the whole idea of going for growth is a risk worth taking. And I really hope it pays off. I really hope this works.
But all the economists are saying we're already in a recession.
Well, this is the story in The Guardian, the front page of The Guardian today. I mean, this is obviously, it comes with the maybes and the probablys. And obviously Liam will know a lot more about this than I do, but clearly it's not your typical recession, if that's what we are indeed in at the moment. There does, thank goodness, still seem to be relatively high levels of employment, for example, and I think that's something, I hope that situation sustains itself. But I think what's really interesting and potentially worrying for the government and for kind of Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss trying to push these things through is that there seems to be this emerging split between the direction that the Bank of England's heading in by putting up interest rates and the direction that the government's wanting to go in by cutting taxes and by going for growth.
Yes, but we're seeing a bit of a ding-dong here between Kwasi Kwarteng and the Bank of England.
Absolutely, and that is why the 2022 mini budget will go down, along with some of Geoffrey Howe's budgets, Nigel Lawson's budgets in the 1980s, as sort of landmark moments in economic policy making. Look, throughout the morning and afternoon, all day here on GB News, we're going to be telling viewers and listeners, all of you at home, what this means for you and your family, the kind of nitty-gritty, if you like, the stamp duty bans, maybe an income tax cut, whatever it is. But we've got to keep hold of the big picture here as well. And what you're saying, Anne's completely right. Look, I've got the Financial Times here. Bank of England increases rates by 0.5%. That's the biggest rise in interest rates since the late 80s. Rates are now back where they were 14 years ago. The Bank of England is trying to push down on inflation, push down on those price pressures. Meanwhile, the Treasury, steered by Kwasi Kwarteng, who's been sacking senior civil servants left, right and centre, a new broom very much in the most important department of state, he is trying to boost growth. Some people would say, oh, it's the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Other people would say, and this is where the debate is, other people would say, no, that's wrong. The Bank of England is taking care of inflation, and because the government is expanding fiscal policy, trying to help people get through, that gives the bank more credibility as it turns the screw. So the Treasury is compensating to some degree, helping us get through this difficult time which the Bank of England is imposing on us.
I agree with what Anne was saying earlier. You know, I do think some people, well, quite a lot of people, myself included, are at the point now where we're thinking, do you know what, we've had enough of this Treasury orthodoxy and maybe it is time for a different change. I mean, for one thing, I do begin to question, I mean, who am I, but I would begin to question how successful the Bank of England has been. I mean, they've had one job, essentially, which is to keep inflation under control. They failed miserably. I mean, perhaps some of these interest rate rises should have been happening this time last year and happening more gradually. They've let inflation get out of control. Now they're doubling down and massively trying to overcompensate, it seems, for their own failures, pushing in a different direction to the Treasury. I mean, I do wonder whether the whole question about the independence of the Bank of England will begin to be raised before too long.
Yeah, maybe so. Look, we need to leave it there, you two. Thank you very much
Can
indeed.
I just ask, how long do you think he'll be on his feet delivering this?
We don't know. I mean, he'll want to keep the statement short so he can say, it's a mini budget, we don't need all these pesky forecasts. So it could be pretty short. There'll certainly be no whiskey at the dispatch box, no outside Downing Street with the big red briefcase. The pageantry of a regular budget statement won't be there, but in terms of substance, this is a big, meaty package.
This will be really fascinating because once he has announced it, to hear people like you actually talking about how it's going to affect you, that's what I want to hear.
Well, we'll be on GB News from 9 o'clock with our mini budget special.
Yeah, so get your questions in now. How's it going to affect me? I've got XYZ mortgage. I've got this, and this, you know, 4 kids to keep and all the rest of it. Get some of those questions in now because it would be really great for Liam to be able to go through it.
Sounds like you're preparing your own question there, Anne.
I sorted that.
She's going to collar me by the coffee machine.
Do you know the thing I would most love to do after he's made his announcement is ring my boys and say, this is good news for you.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to say
I think we all need some good news.
Yeah.
And Joanna's exactly right. There is a sense, look, this is Britain. We're an entrepreneurial people. We've had very low growth for a number of years now. Let's try and change the paradigm a little bit. I do think they're tapping into something elemental post-lockdown within the British psyche.
Do hope so.
We shall see. Catch you two a little bit later on. Thank you. Let's bring you up to date with what's happening today. And as you heard, of course, the Chancellor unveiling that package of tax cuts as part of his mini-budget this morning. It could save households thousands of pounds amid the cost of living crisis. Kwasi Kwarteng will pledge to turn the vicious cycle of stagnation into a cycle of growth.
4 areas of Ukraine controlled by Russian forces are preparing to hold referenda on joining Russia. It's a move that's faced criticism from the West. NATO is calling on all states to reject what it calls Russia's blatant attempt at territorial conquest, whilst the Foreign Secretary James Cleverly urged countries to reject President Putin's sham referenda.
A housing charity says 1 in 7 private tenants in England saw their rent increase last month. The survey by Shelter found that nearly a third say they're spending at least half their household income on rent. 30% report being behind or consistently struggling to pay. Oh, time for the showbiz this morning. Stephanie Tetchy's.
Good morning, Stephen and Anne. Waking you up.
Paisley sort of.
I know, I was in the mood. I've been wearing black for so long. I was like, oh, what am I going to wear?
Like that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still wanting
to wear
break
black,
out,
but still want to wear something that sort of shows some sort of.
Yeah. Should we talk Strictly?
Yes, finally. So the launch of Strictly got delayed due to Our Majesty's passing, but now it returns tonight at 7 o'clock. So we're going to be meeting 15 new celebrities, which includes Matt Goss, Ellie Simmons, Richie Anderson, Fleur East, and we're going to find out who they're going to be partnered with. So for the next 4 months, it's going to be about them hitting on the dance floor, wearing the sequins, and trying to impress us at home with their best dance moves.
And it's a 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
It's been going 20 years, this programme.
20 years. I feel like it's only been around 5 years.
Is Rylan in it?
No, I think he's going to be doing the extra stuff. So
is he?
Yes.
Well, but talking of who's doing extra stuff, what's this? I mean, there's the rumour that the new king and queen, that's Charles and Camilla, are going to have something to do with this?
The rumour has it that the king and the queen, they've big fans of Strictly, as that's come out in the past year.
Well, we know Camilla is.
She's very much
Can't
so.
see Charles.
I know. She's probably been forced to watch it when Camilla's watching it, but apparently they're going to be streaming a live episode from Buckingham Palace this series. I can imagine it'll be towards the final, but that will be great. Is that a no-no, Stephen?
I don't like the idea of that. I don't want our royal family hosting Strictly.
Oh, I love it. Maybe they could have one of the rooms and just have
I can see that they might do it from Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, but I can't imagine Charles and Camilla.
No.
It's like what's happened to the mystique of the royals.
No, exactly. That would completely rubbish the mystique.
Everyone wants access to it.
Yes.
So it's the 20th anniversary. But, you know, we will have, again, a same-sex pairing with Richie Anderson, the Radio 2 presenter. We will have Ellie Simmons, she has dwarfism, so those two are going to be quite interesting dynamics to see how it works.
Yes.
Both of them have spoken about receiving trolling online about it.
Oh, really?
What? Yeah.
Already?
Yes, already, Stephen. But we're hoping it is a positive experience for them both, yeah.
Oh, bet it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hardly anyone who's ever had a negative experience from taking part in Strictly.
No.
Well, unless it comes to their marriage.
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, the Strictly curse. Hopefully
But honestly,
nothing
Strictly
happens.
curse.
It always happens every year without fail. People break up. It's that intensity of being so close when you're dancing.
Well, my lovely mum...
Oh, don't look at me like that, Stephanie.
But anyone of a
Tetchy.
certain age who does ballroom dancing says that. If you do ballroom dancing, there is something very, I don't know, primeval about being that close to somebody and also sharing that much time with somebody.
Training and then hitting the 12 weeks.
Because my mum used to say, you know, in the 60s when we all started jiving and just jigging around, she said, instead of proper dancing, it's not the same. Proper dancing is this closeness that people really love.
It's very intense.
That's what gets the juices going.
Every time.
Sorry. I mean juices in the nicest possible way. But it is.
It is.
Anyway, let's move on.
Yes.
No, I like...
Charlotte Church.
Yeah.
Who's been around forever, but is still only 36.
I know. I feel, well, she looks younger than that, actually. I feel like she hasn't aged that much.
I don't think Charlotte will... Look at her. There she is. And she's been trying... She bought Laura Ashley's old house.
Yeah. I want to pronounce this right. Welsh viewers, forgive me. Is it Why Dollar Dog? I hope I pronounced it right.
I don't think it will be that.
So probably pronounced it wrong, but she bought her home for £1.5 million and she's been trying to renovate it into an eco-wellness retreat and she's pumped in a lot of her life savings into it and it hasn't been going well. She wanted to introduce 4 log cabins into it, but the local council have turned down the planning commission because they're concerned how she's going to be able to treat and dispose of the waste quite effectively. So she's withdrawn the planning permission for it, which is, it seems like this is going to dust. She currently had a documentary series called Dream Build where she's been documenting her journey to doing it and she wanted it open by June this year.
And it's just not going to happen.
It's not going to happen and I don't know if she continues to have the money to invest in it. But, you know, with these things, you've got
Well, she said that this will break her financially. And you can imagine pouring a lot of money into a sort of dream home that doesn't work.
Because she's gone from being, she's gone from being a wild child and all these very serious issues. To now being, she's like an Earth mother now.
She is, but you know, it's always that trajectory with celebrities. They have that thing that hooks them into the limelight, that dies down, and they invest into something like property. But as she's discovering, it's not an easy fet to try get into. So I hope she can still take, you know,
I hope so, because it sounds like a lovely idea.
I know. I would like to do so. You know, guests there would have cold water swimming, foraging, and yoga. Right up my
me
street.
too, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Charlotte, I'm wishing you the best of luck. I want a bit of that right now.
I mean, I like a bit of swimming, but warm, please.
Oh, no, it's refreshing to do cold water. It is.
It is. Well, I'll take your word for it.
It is.
Talking of celebrities in a bit of bother, shouldn't laugh.
No, I'm not laughing.
Shouldn't laugh.
I'm serious.
However, it is quite funny. We look at the memes about Holly and Phil.
Yeah.
And now London Dungeon has jumped on the bandwagon, and I can't help but think it's funny.
So Q-Gate has obviously been a big talking point this week. Whether they did or they didn't is yet to be confirmed or not confirmed. But a lot of people, as you can imagine, in the online world have been taking the mickey out of it. And now London Dungeon, if any of our viewers are going there today, have said that you can ask for the Holly and Phil, which means that you can skip the queue.
It's a fast pass.
Yes, it's a fast pass, but you still be paying the same price and you can get ahead in the queue. So today's the last day of the Holly and Phil promotion, and it's quite bad, but...
It's the fact that if you get a Holly and Phil, guests will have immediate access to the next tour of the London Dungeon, jostling past those peasants who've been patiently waiting their turn.
I didn't think the reaction would be this big, to think all these different brands have jumped on it. And
well, because Domino's have as well.
Yes, Domino's Pizza put out a tweet saying, you know, terribly sorry if we're a bit slow getting your pizza to you, but Holly and Phil have just put in a massive order. It's funny, isn't it? It's like any of those scandals. It's not the scandal itself, it's the cover-up. In this, it's not what they did, it's now the fact that it's taken on a life of its own. And they're being persecuted now, I think, and made fun of for something that... Was it that important?
Yeah.
I think it was, clearly, to some
They've had over, like... This...
But ITV have said, you know, we're really worried for their health.
Yeah.
Because they're being trolled so badly.
They're not used to this background.
To which I say, just don't engage with the trolls. Shut your social media account
It will die down eventually, but they've had a 50,000-strong petition at the moment calling for them to come off air. Yeah. So this has really taken a life of its own, legs of its own.
It really
has. Well, talking of coming off air, that's what we've got to do, Stephanie. But we'll catch up with you a little bit later. We're back with all the top stories in just a moment.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Chancellor has promised a new era for Britain ahead of the unveiling of his mini-budget, 9:30 this morning.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Friday the 23rd of September, first day of autumn. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK on your TV, your radio and online. So wherever you are, you can take us out and about with you today. These are your top stories.
The Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, will announce billions of pounds of both increased spending and significant tax cuts when he delivers his mini-budget at 9:30 this morning.
The previous national insurance hike, as well as the planned increase in corporation tax, both set to be scrapped as the Chancellor tries to reinvigorate Britain's cycle of growth.
And this comes as the Bank of England warns the UK could already be in a recession after they raised interest rates to the highest level for 14 years to combat rising inflation.
Well, we'd love to hear from you on this morning. What do you want to see in the budget? What do you need? GB Views at gbnews.uk. Morning to Melanie, who says, I'm on disability and so at home most of the day. We've all known about the impending price rises. We took the decision to pay £80 on our gas all year, so we're on top of things, and when the winter comes, we won't miss paying it. Now, my children are grown, so we don't have that expense. Now, this I don't get, Melanie. I pay no standing charge. How do you not pay a standing charge? And I cook a roast up most Sundays and it costs about £1, which is no big expense. My gas bill in the summer has been about £30 a month.
We were saying earlier that one of the signs of how things are at the moment, it may just be social change, the way we're changing all our habits, but so many people are reporting now that they no longer use their oven. Now, whether that's deliberate to try and save money or whether it's just a change of habit, it's interesting, isn't it? And how many people, fewer and fewer apparently, ever get round the meal table on a Sunday lunchtime and cook a Sunday roast?
John says the way forward is air fryers.
That's what Sue says. I love a Sunday roast. Not sure if I could manage without using my oven, but I've just got an air fryer. It is good, but I don't think it would cook a family dinner.
What about a halogen oven? Chris says, tell your viewers and listeners to get a halogen oven for roasts and other things. You're heating a smaller space, so saving money. A family can easily use one instead of the conventional oven. I bought one 4 years ago for £30 and made that money back within 6 months. It's conventional cooking with heat, unlike a microwave.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think we must find out more about this because I'm not sure I know what a halogen oven is.
I don't know what a halogen oven is.
And I don't actually know what an air fryer is either.
Halogen hobs, obviously.
But halogen oven? Well, I can see how it's possible. Need to find out more, don't we? We'll try and find out more. We'll get an expert in who knows about Sunday roasts and how you cook them in the best way possible.
Yes, I've heard a lot of people going on about air fryers, but I've never actually.
Fred in Cookham Dean says, I am a pensioner and I welcome whatever may come our way, and in particular for my younger family members. However, I'm far more concerned about how my tax money is being spent. We are bleeding to death on the debit side of the equation.
Yeah, Richie says, as a state pensioner, I would like to see the triple lock reinstated. But Pixie says, if they just reinstate the triple lock, that's no help whatsoever because they took it off us last year.
Well, what about Brian saying, I'd like to see the complete scrapping of VAT? You can't completely scrap it, can you? He says it would instantly stimulate economic growth. We would all see an immediate difference on outgoings and the important feel-good factor may return to the ordinary man in the street.
I don't know what VAT is for.
No, it's just another form of tax.
It's just tax, isn't it? But I don't understand quite well, on what basis VAT is. We just get used to having it added on to just about everything, don't we?
Well, that's right. Brian, I think, has got an important point there. He says it's the feel-good factor. We've got to come out of this mini-budget or fiscal statement or whatever they're calling it. We've got to at least come out. Everybody's got to try and come out feeling, well, at least that's a bit better for me. Don't you think?
What's VAT now, 20%? And it never used to. It used to be 50. Why can't they knock it back down to 15% like it used to be?
Much less than that, didn't it? Once upon a time.
Then it went up to 17.5 and then 20. It keeps going up.
It's just a way of putting prices up, isn't it? That's how it feels, anyway, when you're out shopping.
Oh, yeah, reduced VAT. That's a very good point, Brian. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming
But
through.
wouldn't it be nice to go to the shops and feel that you're not quite paying as much as you did last week?
You've just got to be reliant on the supermarkets and everybody else not then upping the price to, make the difference up. But, that's a trust issue, isn't it?
Well, and it's a trust issue.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, but it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's got to be impressive and it's got to be quick and it's got to happen today.
Yeah, I can't do a play on words on Kwasi Kwarteng.
No, that's a difficult one.
It's a tricky one, but he's the Chancellor, of course, and he is going to make then his maiden fiscal statement. Should happen at 9:30 this morning, so it's quite early, actually, and with that new package of measures to limit the impact of the record energy bills and inflation on both households and, crucially, businesses as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's being called a mini-budget, but it actually could be the biggest tax-cutting fiscal event for 34 years, with the Chancellor expected to announce a range of tax cuts with the hope of boosting the economy and preventing a massive rise in the national debt.
OK, let's head to Downing Street, should we? And our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's there for us this morning. I mean, this mini by name, but not by nature, Tom.
That's exactly the strategy, Stephen. I have to say that just before we got on air, the heavens seemed to have opened here in Downing Street in a reminiscent scene to when Liz Truss became Prime Minister, what feels like months ago now, but was actually only a matter of weeks. Of course, it was chucking it down with rain then, and the words that Liz Truss used was that she was going to get the country out of the storm. As we heard from the Bank of England yesterday, the economic conditions that we face as a country, indeed that lots of the Western world faces right now, are not particularly rosy. It's not particularly sunny, and this is a go big or go home strategy expected from the Chancellor to combat this. Potentially the defining statement, the defining moment in Liz Truss's premiership, from her close ally Kwasi Kwarteng putting forward an enormous package of measures in rapid time. Everything from cancelling that planned corporation tax rise, getting rid of the national insurance rise, but also these investment zones created around the country, low regulation, low tax, trying to spur economic growth. And we hear a number of other rabbits out of the hat that have not yet been pre-briefed. Could this be more on top of the news of potentially stamp duty threshold raises or all the rest of it? What we are hearing is that this will be a significant package of measures, putting everything that they possibly can do, pulling almost every lever that they can at the start of the premiership, because let's not forget, it's not long that they have to turn things around. The general election is expected in May 2024, and to get the country back to growth, to reach that growth target that the government has now explicitly said they want to reach of 2.5% growth per year, they've got to go big and go fast.
Tom, we've got a lot of people already emailing in saying, why is it so early at 9:30 when these major statements are usually at least mid-morning? And why have so many aspects of it already been leaked or announced almost to the media? What's going on there politically?
Well, first of all, we do usually get these sort of leaks before a fiscal statement or a budget. Sometimes policy is given out to journalists to float it, to see how it will do, or perhaps to take the sting out of it when it's announced. For example, explicitly unpopular policy that the government acknowledges is unpopular, like removing that cap on city bonuses, well, it's likely that that was floated a little bit earlier on to take the sting out of it when it's announced tomorrow, because people are prepared for it, are braced for it. The other angle here, of course, is that we've just gone through a leadership contest in which Liz Truss made a number of economic promises, and it would be remiss of her really to not deliver those in short order. During the election campaign, she said she will hold a mini budget, a fiscal statement, or at some point she said she wanted a full budget very early on in her premiership to deliver on those promises. So a lot of these are actually promises that were made on the campaign trail. But as for why this is at the peculiarly early time of 9:30 on a Friday, the House doesn't normally sit like this on a Friday. Indeed, today was supposed to be the first day of conference recess. What they've done is changed the rules to specially allow the House to sit in full today for government business to be laid. But of course, members of Parliament like to get back to their constituencies usually on Thursday evenings. So I think all business is really being crammed in to the first half of this Friday.
Tom, thank you. Back to you a little bit later on. Let's talk to the owner of North London State Agency, Jeremy Leaf, who's here. Good to see you this morning. A lot of focus on stamp duty. I wonder what you think they may do, because I was just looking it up. First-time buyers don't have to pay any stamp duty up to £300,000 at the moment, which is a big spend for a first-time buyer anyway. So what could they do to ease things?
Well, I think, as you were saying about VAT before, they get used to receiving this stamp duty. You know, it's been very active in the property market in the last year or two, and it's a nice little earner for the Treasury, and they don't want to lose that if they can avoid it. And they're seeing demand softening a little bit because it was inevitable it would come off, and they're thinking, oh, we like a bit more of that. But there's other benefits for the economy, job and social mobility and so on.
Actually, can I ask you about stamp duty? I mean, who invented it? And why is it there?
It's hundreds of years ago.
It's not expensive enough to buy a house.
Well, it's just one of those taxes. You know, it'd be lovely not to pay VAT, but the tax is going to come from somewhere else, wherever. It pays for everything that we do, our roads, teachers, I don't know, all sorts of things that we...
So it's just another form of tax?
Police. It's another form of tax, but we want it not to be a deterrent for people moving. As I said, job and social mobility is so important. A healthy property market means a healthy economy.
And if you don't, sorry, I'm obsessed with the stamp duty because I think it's absolutely appalling. But if you don't, as a first-time buyer, have to pay stamp duty on anything lower than 300,000, the price of an average house, or the average price of a house in this country, is something like 276,000, isn't it?
It's around that, yeah. But
So
obviously in London,
lucky.
it's much higher.
It's
much more high. But we want to see, particularly first-time buyers are so important to the market because they trade up, they tend to not stay very long. If we're encouraging too many investors at the low level, although, of course, investors are important to provide affordable rental properties, they tend to buy at the bottom and stay there. First-time buyers trade up, and it's good for the whole of the market.
So what are they going to do then with all of this? They're going to have to reduce stamp duty across the board, aren't they, if it's going to have any significant impact?
Well, that's a very good point, because I think it would be better if it was more selective, perhaps maybe targeting lower-priced property, first-time buyers, energy-efficient homes. I mean, it could be a double whammy. You know, let's get some more energy efficiency going at the same time and get a bit more bang for our buck that way, rather than across the board, because that tends to benefit only the more valuable properties.
Right.
Well, it's a sliding scale, isn't it? Because if you just reduced stamp duty full stop for everybody, that actually does increase mobility upmarket too, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, but it tends to benefit the more expensive properties. So I think perhaps more targeting, get those first-time buyers, because the big problem in the property market, anyone will tell you, is the lack of affordable housing for buying and renting. So that's really what we want to see on the other side.
Why is the housing market so important?
Because,
in all of this. I was going to say, because, I mean, we've got a shortage of housing. We know there's demand and all the rest of it. We know London is this ridiculous bubble in terms of prices and everything else. But why is it so important to the economy? Why does this have to be a priority for the government?
Because there's so many trades and businesses which are dependent on the housing market. You think about legal, financial, building, All
Agencies.
sorts. Agencies, very important. We actually like to see more activity. We don't like to see prices going booming and busting. We want to see them steady. It's no good for anyone. We want to see people want to come in and out of the market freely. But it has
we
such
always
a knock-on
consider
effect.
it a way of taking the temperature of the country's health, really, don't we?
Yeah.
How's the housing market
And if
doing?
people feel good about their properties, then they tend to spend more in the shops, and that's what Liz Truss is talking about: going for growth without causing too much of a problem in the levelling up agenda. That's what she wants to see. But the danger is, of course, inflation.
Are you optimistic about what we're going to see today?
It depends what comes in, how it's done. As I say, I'd like to see it targeted, and I'd like to see more help for first-time buyers. I'd like to see more balance in the market.
OK. Jeremy, good to talk to you, as always. Thank you very much indeed.
And don't forget to get in touch with us and tell us what you are hoping for from this mini-budget and how it should affect you. What do you really want to hear from it this morning? It's 9:30. We've got a special programme at 9 ahead, a mini-budget special, if you like. So hopefully all your questions might be answered by the end of the day. Gosh, they're really going to rake through it, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't
First
know
big
what...
test of this new government.
See, I can't prioritise, in a way, what I want to see, because I just don't know. It's how it's all the knock-on effects and all the rest of it. So I just don't know. In the case of spending this afternoon trying to work out what it all actually means for the country. Anyway, ahead of the mini-budget, the government actually has already announced help for business when it comes to crippling energy bills.
Well, they'll be cut by around half this winter under a government support scheme which will fix wholesale gas and electricity prices for 6 months from the 1st of October.
Well, Paul Hawkins has been finding out how one food supplier in London has been dealing with the challenges, puts it lightly, of high energy costs plus inflation.
The smell is amazing in here. It smells fantastic. Show us what's going on here.
Okay, so today we have a full production and we're making various products for some of our clients. You could probably smell the Thai green chicken curry at the moment.
Another busy morning at Mustard Foods. Head of HR and Facilities Adrian McCaffrey is giving us a tour.
As you can see, everyone's moving around quickly.
Yeah.
Everyone's fully focused.
Chances are you've probably eaten one of their foods, like sauces and curries, that they supply to well-known high street restaurants, hotels and businesses.
Okay, so this is a chilling and boxing area. So how the process works is once the product's sealed and labelled and placed onto the trolleys will make their way through the high care area into this area, and they'll be placed inside this large blast freeze here.
Pre-pandemic, they produced 120 tonnes of food a month. But after COVID and now inflation, that figure has roughly halved, and the company has had to adapt.
The challenging times that we've had since the pandemic and Brexit, we've had to sort of set up a retail side of the business so that we could provide our restaurant grade food to family homes. And we've set up the wholesale side of the business as well, so we can offer our products to smaller businesses, such as hotels and art galleries. So we've had to diversify ourselves a little bit.
Now the company faces increasing costs when it comes to ingredients for its food, as well as energy.
It's the continuing cost of raw ingredients has always been a challenge. Look at the dairy products, you know, just look at the butters and the milk and the cheese and everything else is just soaring at the moment. But that's just to name a few. I would suggest over the last couple of years the electricity is increased around about 20%. And you know the spend is around sort of £13,000–14,000 a month just for our electricity, and the increase of the gas has gone up to sort of close to £1,000 a month.
How helpful is the new government announcement about help for businesses?
We do welcome any scheme that comes forward, so that the cap on the energy prices is going to be a welcome to us, and anything that we can do to reduce our tariff and our rates would be more so welcome. But as everybody knows, that's a 6-month project, and beyond the 6 months is where the concern's going to be in terms of what we're going to do moving forward. Yeah, so this is all our ingredient storage. Just like everybody else, if we didn't increase the cost of our products, then we just typically wouldn't survive. So we have had to increase the prices of our products, not just because of the soaring energy prices, but also the increases of the raw materials and the ingredients as well. It's obviously gone up, so that's always been a challenge.
Fail to meet that challenge, and the government can wave goodbye to its strategy for growth. Paul Hawkins, GB News.
Yeah. Dear me,
It's going to affect everybody in every way you can imagine.
Well, it is, but let's hope this change for businesses, this it's not a cap, is it really? Well, I suppose it is a cap on their energy prices. The fact that there's been no cap in place at all for them...
It's just leaving them to it.
It's just very worried. We were talking earlier about these referenda in parts of Ukraine. Well, parts of Ukraine. You just say we want to be Russian, and it's all a big stitch up. Gary in Bristol says, my wife's mother and sister are in Kherson. They were told if they do not vote supporting Russian annexation, the pension they receive will be stopped.
You see, that's the point, isn't it? Although we heard earlier that it's going to be an online referenda. So, you know...
Do what they like.
Well, you could just shrug your shoulders and say, well, they can do exactly what they like, yeah.
Yeah. Look, let's get back to this whole cost of living situation, what we're going to see in the budget. We can talk to Cornwall, someone who emails in quite regularly, actually. We've gone through his views a few times. One of our viewers and listeners, Lee Drake. Morning, Lee. It's good to finally put a face to the emails that you send in. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Talk us through what is happening with you at the moment, because you've recently lost your job at the Eden Project, haven't you?
Yes, a lot of staff were laid off at the end of the summer. The staff that were laid off, there was a lot more than what normally gets laid off due to their business suffering throughout the summer, and our visitor numbers were dwindling over the summer period. So a lot of us were laid off, which has affected a lot of people in my area who did work at Eden throughout the summer are now suffering more with the cost of living than they were before. So yeah, my job at the Eden Project is no longer, and I'm sort of upset about it because I did enjoy working there. It's an amazing place to work. There's some amazing people at the Eden Project, and I hope someday that it can build itself back up again, and I can go back to work there because I did enjoy it.
I mean, how are you feeling at the moment about, clearly, you don't have that job, which is a real worry just in itself, would be worrying at an ordinary time. But given that everybody is worrying about costs of fuel for the winter, how are you and your family going to cope?
I mean, we claim universal credit, but universal credit, as everybody knows, doesn't really touch the surface of what people need. The cost in electric and gas, the energy prices that have gone up, it leaves a typical person with £116 a month after their universal credit income, and it's not enough to live on. I don't think there's enough help. I think it's all too much talk, and I think the budget today will be too much talk, but not enough action. It seems to happen every time we have a budget. We have Boris Johnson and his budget with Boris Johnson. I say Rishi Sunak with his budget. It didn't really work out. I think the uplift in universal credit should have gone to everybody, not just people on universal credit, but people on other low-income benefits as well. I think people got left behind on that, and I do think if any help like that is announced again, I think everybody should be entitled to that help.
I mean, what's tragic in all of this, and it's people like you, I think, Lee, that they need to listen to, because am I right in thinking, I'm thinking from your email yesterday, you've got another one on the way in December, which yes. It should be this a joyful time, something to really look forward to, but of course you've got to also view it now in your circumstances as something which is going to put more strain on the budget. It's not what you want to be doing.
No, and I think the national insurance reversal in November, for example, that doesn't really help people. It only helps people who were affected by that national insurance change. It's £27.50 a month, and I know that's a lot of money to people in sort of my situation on universal credit, but this national insurance reversal is only helping the people that lost out that national insurance rise in the first place. It doesn't cover anything to do with the cost of living. Where are we going to find the money from social care now this is going to be reversed? I think we're just going downhill, and until there's major change, I don't think we're going to get any better in this country, personally.
Just looking ahead to this morning, 9:30, what can the Chancellor possibly announce that will help you personally and your family?
I don't I don't expect them to come out today and announce that they're going to help everybody. I think the help that's being announced is not enough. It's never enough from this government. It never has been. They've been in power for 12 years, and look where we are. I think we need a major change. I don't think Labour Party, I don't think any other party can really do any better than Conservatives have at the moment. There needs to be a major change, and it needs to be a complete overhaul in government, in my opinion.
Well, look, that's unlikely to happen at the moment. But let's keep our fingers crossed, Lee, that there is some help on the way for you in this budget today. But we shall watch it very closely. Lee, thank you. It's really good to talk to you at long last.
Nice
Thanks
to see
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much. Thank
you. Lee is one of our GB viewers who often gets in touch, and do get in touch yourself with just your feelings on this morning. Is there anything that Kwasi Kwarteng can talk about today and announce today that you will come away smiling and think, thank goodness?
See, it's interesting. I just think it's talking to Lee that it's fascinating, because I mean he's saying leave the insurance, national insurance where it is. The focus should be on people who are more desperate. And you can absolutely understand his opinion, can't you? You can see his viewpoint, absolutely, even if you think, I'd like a bit more help. He's in a desperate situation.
Well,
How do we prioritise?
If you were Prime Minister and you were sitting at the Cabinet table, you'd say, right, that's what we've got to do. We've got to, you guys have got to come up with something that gives me, something that will give people fast movement on at least some help. And then a longer term, if you like, very traditionally conservative, long-term view on the economy. But there's got to be something that will work quickly.
Yeah. Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere, though. In a couple of minutes, Paul Coyte's going to be here with all your sport. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio and online.
We're proud to be the People's Channel, Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Paul Coyte's here in the studio.
We've just been having the silliest conversation. We've got to share it because that's the reason we're giggling, and you may well have a view. We were talking about how I found myself Googling something, then I couldn't remember what I was Googling.
Yeah, and I was saying I pick up the phone and think I must do something, and I always then just revert to Amazon because it must be on Amazon.
Oh dear. I walk into different rooms and I walk into it and think, what am I? Why did I come in here? and I'm putting it down, and I'm not putting it down to age. It's just that I'm so busy.
Yes.
I've decided that my brain is so full of different things. it doesn't have time for those things.
Yeah.
Is that the answer? Is that what it is?
That sounds better than the fact we're just getting old.
I don't know what it is, but if you do it as well, get in touch and let us know. GBviews at gbnews.uk. It drives you balmy, doesn't it?
It does.
And because the trouble is, you'll end up buying something off Amazon that you never would have.
Never
You
intended.
only have remembered why you were on your phone.
Did it yesterday. I ended up buying a power bank.
I don't even know what a power bank is.
You know, that if you
Like a
charge
spare battery for your
battery.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah, very nice.
I did need. To be fair, I did need one, but
I lost my last two to my son, who was in the queue.
Right.
And he emailed and said, I've just realised I'm about to run out of battery on my phone at the start of what was a 9.5-hour wait. And so I actually couriered them, not by a proper courier company, but by a relative who drove the 2 power banks to him. I'll never get them back.
No, that's it.
I'm really glad you mentioned it, because I do need a power bank, but I now know that by the time I walk out of here, I would have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
By the time then my phone runs out, and then I thought, that's what I've got to do. I'll look it up. I can't because my phone's dead.
Yeah.
And then when it's powered, I'll forget it again.
I'll send you a link.
Please do.
Let's talk football.
Yes.
What's happening tonight?
England, Italy tonight in the Nations League. So the Nations League, I sort of explained it a bit yesterday. The Nations League, it's trying to make friendlies a bit more exciting and just have some sort of purpose and meaning. Now, in the Nations League at the moment, England are just doing so badly. You know, we haven't won in 4 games. They got spanked by Hungary 4-0 in the last game, playing it's a football phrase, we can go with it.
Okay.
It's 4-0 at home to Hungary, so now playing in the San Siro, the famous San Siro in Milan against Italy, who haven't qualified for the World Cup, so we'll probably have a little point to prove, whereas England, it doesn't really matter so much. I mean, there's a chance they're going to get relegated from their Nations League group, but it's really all about the World Cup, which is coming up in just a few weeks. So Italy, and then we've got Germany as well in a few days too.
I sort of hope Italy don't win tonight in Milan, because I stayed in Milan in... When did I get married? May.
Right.
And there was football
This is really boding well, isn't it? You can't remember when you got married, and it's only a few months ago.
There was football matches then, and when Italy won whatever it was, I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't sleep all night because of the noise.
Is that right?
All up and down the streets, the horns beeping.
Really?
It's horrific.
OK, fine.
So there you
So a
go.
quiet weekend in
Can I
Milan
ask
is
you-
not the answer today.
Why is Roger Federer on one of the front pages? I haven't actually read the story.
Right, well,
What's
Roger
going on?
Federer, it's the Laver Cup, named after the great Rod Laver, which is probably I mean, we talked about Rod Laver and Roger Federer, didn't we, and their similarities. So Roger's playing in this. It's basically Europe against the world. So you've got John McEnroe. I mean, it's amazing, the names in this. And it's at the O2 in London. And this is going to be the hottest ticket. John McEnroe is the captain of the world's team, and we've got Bjorn Borg, who is the captain of the Europe team. Now, this is the launch.
Borg.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
I would pay just to see McEnroe play Borg again.
Yes.
So this is the launch that happened a couple of days ago, and there's Roger Federer, still looking $1 million.
Oh, there's Borg behind him.
There we are. There's Bjorn right behind him.
Oh, I thought that
the
was
white
Boris
hair.
Johnson.
No,
Yes.
no, that's Bjorn Borg.
Has Bjorn Borg and Boris Johnson ever been confused,
There's
ever?
all of the great champs there, aren't
They really are. So
Wow.
this is the Europe team, and really they should be just wiping the floor with the rest of the world, because as you can see on there, you've got... This is the USA team.
There's
So there's
McEnroe, there's Rod
McEnroe. It's
Laver.
probably the only one you'd recognise there in the USA team, apart from maybe Francis Tiafoe or the rest of the world. And so then we've got Djokovic is playing, we have Nadal playing, we have Andy Murray, and we have Roger Federer. Now, they had a doubles game, which was a practice game last night. Can you imagine being at that? So you got Djokovic and Murray
Is this going to
playing
be an
against
annual
Federer
event?
and Nadal. Sorry.
Is this going to be an annual event?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. They play it regularly.
Oh.
So, and there's the actual cup itself. It's not really about the cup.
But wouldn't
it's
it?
just about the
No, it's
names.
not about the case. It's about going on. No matter what your ticket and what the time of day, you'd see major champions playing with and against each other.
This is what you want. Tonight is the one, because Murray plays, and then it's followed by this doubles game where we've got Rafa Nadal. He's going to play alongside Roger Federer, and this is going to be Federer's last competitive match.
Oh,
so there'll be tears. It'll be fantastic. It's the ticket
and
to
fun. When they
You know
play
what?
these
You're right.
games, they have a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And they joke with the audience and everything. It's wonderful.
But have you
wonderful
noticed, though, that it's very easy to get a laugh in tennis? Because you can do anything and the whole crowd will laugh. Because, they do the old thing, I know what I'll do, I'll hand the racket to the ball boy and everyone, anybody will laugh at anything. You can blow a raspberry and everybody have tears in their rise.
Absolutely
at tennis.
right.
It's the easiest comedy audience in the world at tennis. So anyway, but it will be a fun night. I think it's going to be terrific. And,
wonderful.
The name's there, so it really is a fantastic event to go to.
Lovely stuff.
What I'm trying to say is if anybody's got a spare ticket...
Well, me too.
OK, we'll go together.
Don't queue jump, Paul.
Oh, gosh, no.
Right,
I would do so.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful stuff.
Oh, dear. Well, look, don't go anywhere here on GB News because we've got... what have we got?
Papers.
Oh, we've got all the papers,
Newspapers
yes, in just a moment. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It's 7:37, very nearly. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Should we have a look at today's front pages for you? And we'll start with The Times, which says that Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor, is preparing to announce £50 billion worth of tax cuts to stimulate economic growth.
The Guardian leads with the Bank of England's warning that the UK is in a recession and interest rates may need to go up even more.
And the Daily Mail there says the Chancellor will announce the biggest tax cuts in 30 years, exclamation mark.
The Eye has the Bank of England's decision to hike interest rates yesterday.
And the Daily Express says Britain will see the biggest tax cuts in decades, announced this week.
The Telegraph says the Chancellor has told the Bank of England to take forceful action to help households.
And the Mirror leads with the growing death toll from knife crime. Oh, that in itself is terrible, isn't it?
Well, look, let's go through the papers with author and academic Joanna Williams and our very own business and economics editor, Liam Halligan. Morning to you both. Liam, let's start with actually looking at the Times and the ban on fracking, the moratorium, which was lifted yesterday.
It's a news tsunami, isn't it? Of course, so far this morning we've been talking amidst the showbiz and the sport, mainly about the mini budget that will be happening at 9:30, and we'll have special programmes on that. But within the Times, there's a story about the moratorium being lifted on fracking. That's the controversial method of extracting gas from shale rock deep underground. Explosions underground to extract that gas. They've been causing earth tremors. That moratorium on fracking came in November 2019, just before Boris Johnson went for a general election. He thought that would be popular with environmentalists and particularly younger voters. Liz Truss is now lifting that ban. There's a row, though, as ever, about whether or not there should be local consent particularly near Blackpool, where Quadrilla, the main fracking company, or one of the leading fracking companies, has 2 wells pretty much ready to go. The CEO of Quadrilla, Francis Egan, told me a couple of weeks ago that could happen within 6 months, as long as those local consents are there. So the general legal moratorium has been lifted. We still need local consent. And a lot of local MPs, it must be said, not just Labour MPs, but Tory MPs as well, are expressing umbrage, as they do in this Times article, as they did in the House of Commons yesterday.
But the climate has changed, if you like, hasn't it? The political and social economic climate has changed. When back in 2019, we weren't thinking we would be so direly in need of power.
Back in 2019, and it was only nerds like me that talked about energy security, right?
Yeah.
Now it is literally talked about in pubs, clubs, hairdressers, shops across
So the
Britain.
question is, your man in the pub tonight, does he think differently, he or she, think differently about whether he would vote for or against fracking, now that we're all facing power insecurity?
Undoubtedly. I mean, look, Liz Truss is not scrapping but suspending those renewable energy levies on household fuel bills. I would say this time last year, a lot of people would have said that's silly. We should pay a little bit more on our fuel bills in order to get the renewable energy industry going. Today, I think that view has changed, at least for now, as we get through this crisis.
Let's have a look at the Times, Joanna, and the morality police, which, I mean, which actually exists in Iran.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we've obviously been focusing, understandably, on what's going on in this country so far this morning, but this is a big story that's brewing and has been brewing for some time now in Iran. It all started a couple of weeks ago with a woman, Mahsa Amini, who was arrested by the morality police because she wasn't wearing a veil, she wasn't wearing a hijab.
Well, she wasn't wearing it properly.
When she wasn't wearing her trousers properly, they said, and certainly not the veil. And I mean, the very fact that she was arrested for that should shock us. I mean, the fact that there are rules about what women can wear to the extent of dictating how they should wear their trousers. Sadly, tragically, I mean, this woman then died, and the rumours are that she was beaten in the back of a police van, taken to hospital in a coma, died days later. Her family say that she was a perfectly healthy young woman before going into hospital. Anyway, the big news is that this has now prompted angry protests, which are spreading throughout the whole of Iran. And brave women, I mean, I think we throw the word bravery around so liberally.
It's courage
nowadays.
that we've never had to come to terms with.
Exactly. I mean, they are very seriously risking their lives. 6 people have died in these protests. The police just opened fire on protesters.
I mean, they are walking about, some of these protesters without their heads covered at all.
Exactly. There have been impromptu fires started in the streets, women burning their headscarves. I mean, I think the onus is on us in the UK. Obviously, there's not much we can do, but at least to be talking about this, to be saying Mahsa Amini's name, to be showing some solidarity. I mean, if you think after George Floyd and the wave of protests that there were in the UK and throughout the whole world to protest about what happened, that police killing, whereas the danger is we've got another police killing in a foreign country of an innocent, unarmed woman, and kind of the world falls silent, and that
Don't you think it's because you just get this feeling that Iran wouldn't take any notice of anything we did anyway? It was a bit different with George Floyd. America at least did take some notice, but you just think, would we get through to anyone in Iran at all?
I was once skiing in Iran.
Really?
Seriously, they have very good powder ski resorts. I was skiing in Iran with some young Iranian friends. Well, not so young, they're roughly my age. And we were pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and a couple of the women had taken off their headscarves, their hijabs and so on, because they were skiing. And 2 guys literally skied up to them from the thought police, if you like, and told them that they were dressed immodestly. Absolutely incredible, in the middle of pretty much nowhere while we were skiing. But I have to say, an incredible country, and it's amazing to think in the 50s, 60s and 70s, before the Iranian Revolution in the late 70s, which we remember well, of course, and this was a very sort of liberal country by the standards of the region. And it's still a country where there's tremendous amount of female education, for instance.
A beautiful country with
incredible engineers, an incredible culture.
Yeah.
It should be one of the most important investment destinations in the world, and yet it's isolated from the global
And here we are
economy.
in 2020. Is it 2?
2.
Oh, gosh.
We're having one of those mornings, aren't we?
That's weird. But here we are in 2022, and a woman can get arrested and possibly killed because she's not wearing her clothing properly. This is just unbelievable.
To The Guardian, Liam, looking at the Chancellor's approach, causing alarm for some.
Yeah, Larry Elliott, economics editor of The Guardian, very respected journalist. He's gone on that Bank of England warning yesterday that the economy is in recession. That's not, it's 2 successive quarters of negative growth. These Bank of England estimates for the third quarter, they're saying the second quarter, the economy contracted. They're saying it also in the third quarter. They're not official estimates. We've got to wait for the Office for National Statistics to come up with those. But still, the economy is slowing. Some people would say, all the more reason to cut taxes. Other people would say, but that means our national accounts there's lots of red ink. That means we shouldn't be cutting taxes. Discuss. That's what we're going to be discussing for the rest of today and indeed for the next few years.
I'll tell you what, Liam. Here's one for you then.
Go on then.
Peter Jeffries has been in touch. Morning to you, Peter. It says, can Liam explain this? We know that currently inflation is supply-led, not consumer-led. Higher interest rates will increase costs for businesses who will pass that cost on to other businesses and consumers. That forces prices up and puts the economy further into recession, opposite of what the government wants to achieve. So Peter says, I don't get Bank of England policy.
I picked out Peter's email too, sent to us from the Isle of Wight. It's a really good question. Because inflation at the moment is mostly about supply chain issues, the fact that firms' costs are going up, the cost of transport are going up, the cost of all kinds of inputs are going up, not least because the global economy is still recovering from lockdown. So how can higher interest rates bear down on prices? It's a very, very good question because inflation is to some degree supply-led. On the other hand, if you raise interest rates, you contract or at least push down on the amount of credit that is created, the amount of borrowing that's created. So that does push down on the demand side. And also, crucially, I'd say to Peter, it's about the exchange rate. If we didn't raise interest rates at a time when the rest of the world was raising interest rates, not least the US Federal Reserve, which has been raising very, very aggressively, they've done 2 successive 75 basis point increases. We just did a 50 basis point increase yesterday. Then the pound would slip a lot more against major currencies. What does that mean? That means when we import stuff, and we import a lot of stuff in the UK, those imports get more expensive, and you then get inflation, as we say in economics, through the exchange rate channel. That means a lower pound pushes up inflation, not least because we import lots of fuel, which is priced in dollars. So that's the answer, I'd say, to Peter. When you raise interest rates, you do push down on demand, you do push down on the amount of borrowing created, you do push down on the amount of credit that banks create, and also you keep the exchange rate relatively firm. But he's completely right. This is a major conundrum for the Bank of England because so much of the inflation is supply inflation through higher import costs, through higher freight costs and so on. And this is the Bank of England's main defence for why it didn't start raising rates earlier. So Peter has really put his finger on something very, very important and something that we don't often unpack on television.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. Thank you, Peter, for that. Meanwhile, Joanna, this interest rate hike is, it's pointed out in the eye, for those of us who have a mortgage or any sort of debt in that sense, it's going to cost us.
No, and obviously a lot of the talk this morning's been about tax cuts, where people are going to be getting more money, but the impact of the interest rate hike yesterday will really hit people with mortgages. I mean, particularly, obviously, people on variable rate mortgages. If you're on a fixed deal, then you're going to be OK for a few months to come, although the shock will just await you. But the eye says that 2 million people, around 2 million people...
Well, if you just read that headline, average mortgage payments to rise by up to £273 a month. Anyone I know, particularly younger people, who are managing a mortgage, every pound counts at the end of every month. To suddenly find you're expected to pay £273 more is It's so, I mean, bewildering, doesn't it?
And the problem is we've had these low interest rates for such a long time. I think people have got very, very used to it. And I think if you go back kind of 20, 25 years, people were more used to the fact that interest rates were high. But I guess at that point, house prices and the size of the mortgage was probably lower. The worry is that people have taken out large mortgages on the assumption that interest rates will stay relatively low and are now going to be massively hit by this.
2 quick points on this, because this is what people really care about. They care about the big picture discussion and they care about, you know, the personalities in politics, but this stuff is what they really care about. So Joanna's completely right, of course. A whole generation are used to these very low interest rates. And even though interest rates now at 2.25%, they're still historically very, very low. The proportionate increase is absolutely massive. Interest rates were 0.1% not a year or so ago in the aftermath of lockdown. Now they're much, much higher. The other thing is that even though those higher mortgage payments are higher, the world has changed. There are now more homes in the UK owned outright without a mortgage than are owned with a mortgage.
Is that a fact?
Which is kind of bad, because people buying houses with mortgages, that's what social mobility and progressiveness in this country is all about. And of the 11 million mortgages in the UK, that's only around a third of households have a mortgage, or just under a third. Of the 11 million mortgages, only 2.2 million are on variable rates. Only 2.2 million will be immediately affected by this Bank of England change. Now, having said that, of the 8.8 million which are fixed, some of those fixes are only a year or 2 years, so they will expire. And those people, often young families, as you say, and struggling to make ends meet, struggling to get themselves a decent property to build a home life in.
Are we going to see repossessions like we did in previous?
I wouldn't want to be alarmist, but I do think when you do have a generation, as Joanna has rightly said, who are only used to low interest rates, and then there's a big proportionate increase in interest rates, some people will have stretched themselves too far. And as these interest rate increases bite on companies, there will be more people unemployed.
Just briefly, because we're almost out of time, but surely people were told in the wake of the subprime mortgage crisis, people should have known not to, at least be, I don't mean there's not a criticism of the borrowers, but they should have been advised, shouldn't they, not to overextend
Stephen, the whole
themselves.
of human existence is all about hope over experience, right? And what are you meant to do? Look, you go to work, the two parents, you want to have kids and get a decent house. If you have to borrow lots of money to do what would be completely normal for the previous generation, you are going to do it. And this is the issue. We just got to build a lot more homes, and then we would have far, far more affordable housing.
That's a tough one all round. Look, we do need to leave it there, but you're going to be back in the next hour, so look forward to that.
Do get in touch with us, please, with your views on this. If you're particularly badly affected, or you're thinking, what on earth are we going to do? Just following that very discussion, one of my sons was just beaten out of an offer for a house, and he'll be glad today. At the moment, hearing that, he'll be glad that they've given up for the moment, looking around for a house, and they'll be glad. And I think that's so upsetting, isn't it?
Oh, dear. Well, let's move on to another government issue, should we? Because the government is facing a backlash because of its decision yesterday to lift that moratorium on fracking in England.
Yeah, the Business Secretary, Jacob Rees-Mogg, was accused of trying to buy people off by saying that fracking would become popular if locals are paid for the inconvenience.
Well, let's talk to GB News viewer and listener Des Cooper, a retired geology and citizenship teacher who joins us now. Morning to you,
Hello, Des.
It's good to see you. What do you make of this whole fracking issue?
Morning.
Hi.
Morning. What do I think about it? The issue has been clouded for a very long time by a lot of mystery, whereby people say it causes earthquakes, and everybody is likely to be terrified by that. But in actual fact, it causes tremors. And there's been a whole load of misinformation put out there about fracking. What we do know about fracking is that there are huge supplies of gas awaiting us if we are only able to get at them. And we also know that on the one extreme, there are people prophesying doom and gloom if we try and get that, and other people saying it's going to be very easy and straightforward. And if we steer a middle path between those two extremes, I am certain in my own mind that there is a way for the UK to tap into these very, very, very substantial reserves of gas. But my big point about this is the government should be steering all of this and investing in this for the very simple reason that if they do, they can do something that they've never done before, which is not only guarantee energy security for as long as we need some fossil fuel, and don't forget that gas is the cleanest of fossil fuels, and we are investing in nuclear and we are investing in turbines and all the rest of it, but the government will be in a position to dictate the price. And my feeling is that if the government could invest and guide these companies and guide them, then they would be able to control the operation, and at the end of it, which may be anything between 6 months and 18 months' time, we as a nation could come out with gas prices returned to the 2021 level, because the cost of exploration hasn't gone up. What's gone up is the price and the profits that these companies are making. So my big message to the government would be involve yourself. Don't leave it to these companies by themselves. They will make mistakes, and tell the public that the reason that you're doing it is so that you can return to reasonable gas prices, reasonable electricity prices, and have energy security, which is something 30 years of government has failed to do.
Oh, Des, you put it so well. Thank you very much. Des for Prime Minister, I say. It's really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Sorry it was so brief, Des, but really appreciate that.
But it's so interesting, isn't it? Would people's minds about fracking be changed if they saw it as just a short-term measure to get us through this crisis, whilst maybe the government also still invests in greener and more sustainable forms of energy so that we can have energy security? Yeah. Would that be the answer? GBviews at gbnews.uk. And don't forget, we're still with you in the next hour too.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Compared with yesterday, today's looking brighter for many. There'll be some sunshine out there, still a few showers about, but the wettest weather will be confined to the far southeast, where a cold front is currently trying to clear, but it's making slow progress. That's the front that brought some heavy rain across central areas during yesterday, and it's still bringing some wet weather, the rain having broken up into showers, but still some heavy downpours expected throughout much of the day across East Anglia and the southeast of England. A lot of cloud through southern areas as well, but brighter skies further north, a marked contrast here compared with recent days. Still some showers breaking out, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England primarily, but in between, in that sunshine, it won't feel too unpleasant. Temperatures reaching 16 to 20 Celsius. Now into the evening, and the rain continues on and off across parts of the far southeast. There could be some heavy, even thundery downpours for a time, but elsewhere, most places will see clear spells. Still some showers trickling into western shores as well as the North Sea coast. However, inland, mostly dry, clear spells and temperatures dipping into the mid to high single figures. So a fresh start to the weekend, but a bright start for many. For most, we're going to see sunny spells continuing throughout Saturday. There'll still be some showers coming into the east and the west coast, and a few developing inland across central areas during the afternoon. Away from the showers, though, there'll be some sunny spells. However, heavy rain won't be too far away. That will remain close to the far southeast, and it'll be quite breezy and cool here as well. Temperatures by and large into the mid to high teens. So a cool day expected, and then on Sunday, after a bright start, a band of heavy rain and strong winds spreads in from the north through Sunday night and into Monday, and that will introduce colder air for the start of next week.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
On the Mark Stein Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Stein Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
The Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, has promised a new era for Britain ahead of unveiling his mini-budget at 9:30 this morning.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. It's Friday, the 23rd of September, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK, on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. So here are the top stories this morning.
Well, Kwasi Kwarteng will announce billions of pounds of increased spending and significant tax cuts when he delivers his mini-budget later this morning.
The previous national insurance hike, as well as the planned increase in corporation tax, both set to be scrapped as the Chancellor attempts to reinvigorate Britain's cycle of growth.
Well, all this comes as the Bank of England warns the UK could already be in recession. They raised interest rates to the highest level for 14 years yesterday to combat already sky-high inflation.
And don't forget, well, you don't, I know, because we've already got lots and lots of views coming in, but do join in. Anything you're worried about, you want to hear the Chancellor actually announcing today that might help you, GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Feeling very Cumbrian this morning. Vicky in Walney Island. Morning to you.
Walney Island?
Yeah, Walney. It's just off Barrow.
Oh, right.
Just by the shipyard. There you go. She said, we switched to LED lighting a few years ago and haven't used our dishwasher or oven for more than a year. Bought a small tabletop oven which uses half of our main oven energy and is perfect for meals for two. We've also gone back to a stove kettle, which looks nice in the kitchen.
They do, actually, don't they? There's something about a stove kettle.
It's a whistling, though, drives me mad.
But that's what they're meant to do, to alert you to the fact that it's boiling.
I know.
Vicky actually says already we've seen a difference in our energy usage. Small changes really do make a difference.
Yeah.
I've remembered what I was Googling, by the way.
Oh.
It was air fryers. We were talking about air fryers. So many people getting in touch with their tips on basically how to save energy, not using the oven anymore. There's a report out that says fewer and fewer people are ever using their oven. So I didn't know what an air fryer was. And neither did you, to be fair. So that's what I was Googling when I forgot. And they look interesting, don't they?
They do. I'd like to try before I buy, sort of thing.
Well, you're a gadget freak, really, aren't you?
I do like gadgets.
It does look as...
Might have to be looking. I might be popping to the shop to have a look at one. Jenny in Cumbria. Whereabouts in Cumbria are you, Jenny? Says, just wanted to say thank you to you and GB News for voicing your audience.
That's
a nice way
nice
of putting
phrase.
it.
Yes, it is.
So sorry to hear Lee, who we spoke to a little bit earlier on, is now unemployed from the Eden Project. I remember you reading his email about worrying about his job. I sympathised with his worry as I was jobless and only just got offered a position this week, which is a great relief. And well done to you, Jenny.
Yeah.
But that is, I can imagine, a huge relief there.
OK, a little bit of light relief here.
Oh, yes,
because that's what we were talking about, because I was saying that I started Googling something, couldn't remember what it was. Do you ever do that? Stephen says, no, but you do other things like that. You can't remember why you're on your phone. Roger says, talk about being in a room and forgetting why you're there. 2 days ago, I was in bed for 20 minutes when I realised I'd only gone into the bedroom to get a book.
I love that.
I can absolutely see
love
that happening.
Ian in Stratford-upon-Avon says, wait till you find your car keys in the fridge.
Oh, yes,
Can
that's
imagine.
Right. Yeah. And Roger says, walking into a room and forgetting what you went for is nature's way of giving you exercise. Oh. And actually, he says, I always enjoy the show up here in Estonia. Morning to you in Estonia.
You go. Well, I'm glad it's not just us then.
It's clearly not just us. No. And I don't think it's got anything to do with age. It may just be sometimes there's too much going on in there.
Oh, I don't know. I think it is an age thing. I do think it's when you know you've got to remember something, it's on the sort of tip of your tongue.
Yes.
And the more you try to think about it, the harder it becomes.
And then sometimes you do remember what it was, but hours later, you think, that's what I was going to do. Anyway.
Weird, isn't
it? If you're a bit like that, let us have your stories, please.
If you can remember.
I love the one about finding the keys in the fridge.
Yeah. So there you go. GBViews, gbnews.uk. Write it down if you're likely to forget that address.
No, you won't.
Now, Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng set to make his maiden fiscal statement, as we're calling the budgets these days, at about 9:30 this morning, with a new package of measures to limit the impact of those record energy bills and inflation on households and businesses.
Yeah, so we've got a special programme, a mini budget special, if you like, starting at 9 o'clock, in and out, roughly an hour's time. Anyway, they may call it a mini budget, but apparently it's going to be the biggest tax-cutting fiscal event for decades, with the Chancellor expected to announce a range of tax cuts with the hope of boosting the economy and preventing a massive rise in the national debt.
Well, let's head to Downing Street and talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Morning to you, Tom. I mean, it's interesting that a lot of this has been leaked already or released already. Are we going to get anything that we weren't expecting?
Well, there is great speculation that there are still some rabbits to pull from that hat, and that's because this is really a hell-for-leather attempt by the government to get up this country's sclerotic rate of growth. Of course, we heard from the Bank of England yesterday that there's some assessment that we may already be in recession. These are tough economic times, and the government's view is they require bold economic responses. So whilst some people are calling this a budget, a mini budget, a fiscal statement, the government is now calling it none of these things. It's calling it a growth plan. And in this so-called growth plan, we're going to see every single measure justified under the question, does it boost the United Kingdom's growth rate or not? And that's why we're going to see these sort of tax cuts that Liz Truss promised in her leadership election campaign. Of course, not going ahead with the proposed corporation tax rise, cancelling the already implemented national insurance tax rise. But also looking at other areas where growth could be boosted across the country. Special investment zones that Liz Truss again promised in her election campaign, but we have heard a lot more about, involving lower taxes and reduced regulation, potentially even easier planning rules in various areas of the country to boost economic activity and again get up the country's growth rate. Other areas that of course we're expecting may well be around stamp duty. Now that would try and ease the gummed up housing market, making it easier for people to move into perhaps houses that better fit their situation rather than making it too expensive to move house. But there's also speculation that there'll be other measures that have not yet been pre-briefed or pre-tested. Why is this such a busy budget? Why is this such a full growth plan, as the Treasury call it? Well, clearly it is not long before that general election, less than 2 years if we're to believe the usual cycle of these things, and that means the government needs to do everything that it can at the start of this new term to try and get some of the benefits of that policy by the time they go to the country. It's a race against time, really, to get the United Kingdom's growth rate up to this new target that the government has of 2.5% growth per year.
It's interesting, Tom, you say it's a race against time. Is that why there's going to be none of the flummery that usually goes with a big budget day where the Chancellor comes out of number 11 and holds up the big red case and everything? This is very businesslike statement to the House, really, isn't it? At 9:30 in the morning.
It is. It's done in rapid time. And of course, we normally wouldn't see a fiscal statement on a Friday. We normally wouldn't see it at this time in the morning. But of course, the entire parliamentary calendar has become so truncated by what happened over the last 12 or so days that they're trying to fit it all in and do it quickly. This is why we're not getting a companion document from the Office for Budget Responsibility. Normally there would be this sort of assessment of the spending situation of the country, an assessment of our fiscal situation as a nation. But the issue with that, the government says, is that an OBR assessment done properly takes 10 weeks to perform. All those different calculations going in, that thorough assessment is a 10-week process, which is why the government says we're not getting one today alongside this fiscal statement. There's been some criticism of that, some demands that a sort of slimmed down OBR assessment could be done. The government saying they don't want those sort of rushed forecasts that may well be less accurate. Instead, the government has committed to requesting the statutory obligated 2 OBR reports within this fiscal year. So not as a companion to this statement, but we will see that full-blooded assessment of the fiscal situation of the country a little bit later on. We'll see 2 of those reports within this fiscal year, just not in time for this fiscal statement. Overall, it does seem like this government wants to not only look busy, but indeed be busy. We saw, of course, the NHS announcement yesterday, the fracking moratorium lifted yesterday too. We've had announcements on Brexit freedoms bills, and indeed today this mini budget as well. This is a government that is trying to get things done as quickly as it possibly can, because frankly, there may not be that much time to deliver.
Tom, thank you. Well, let's talk to economics expert Laurie Laird, who's here in the studio. Good to see you this morning.
Experts putting a little pressure on me.
Well, yeah, but rightly so.
There's pressure on all round at the moment, isn't there?
So look, what's going on? Put it in a simple way for us. What are we expecting to see? What impact will it have?
But I think the big question is, will what we're expecting to be announced spur growth, right? That's what we're looking for. And I think if all of the measures that we're going to see are pretty much aimed at people who already have money. So we're seeing a rollback in that NI contribution. Well, that's fine if you have a job, a little bit of a tax break there. If you don't have a job, it's not going to help a great deal. Getting rid of the cap on bankers' bonuses, that may make a difference on the margin. It may make it easier to hire people in the UK, but it's not going to make a big difference to the greater population. Question is do these people who are going to get a tax break, do they go ahead and spend it? Consumption is 2/3 of the UK economy. If people go and spend it, yes, that can improve growth.
Doesn't that also increase inflation?
It will, absolutely. Very, very good question. It also doesn't do anything for the people who are going to struggle the most because of inflation. These tax breaks are not going to help the wider population.
No, they only help you if you, as you say, you've got a job. Yeah.
I'm staggered that we're looking at tinkering with stamp duty. So it's making a very scarce commodity, a house in the UK, even in greater demand. That's not going to help people again, and it's going to hurt people who are renting because that's taking properties off the market. So I don't see how this helps growth if you're really struggling. It may help in aggregate, it may help GDP a little bit, but that doesn't say much for the people at the lower end of the income scale.
In your view, what would help?
much, much more targeted support for people who need it. We know this government is willing to spend a whole lot of money. We know that they're willing to forgo a lot in tax revenues. It would be nice if all of that money were targeted at people who are going to need it the most. And if you don't mind, I want to pick up on something that Tom Harwood said about the Office for Budget Responsibility. He's right. The OBR does say we'd like 10 weeks to prepare some kind of assessment of spending plans. But the OBR has said publicly that they have been working on spending plans since over the summer. They knew that there was going to be a new government coming in. The OBR has offered to provide numbers that that come close to costing this. They don't have full detail.
Yeah, but they've been looking at Rishi Sunak's plans.
But they have been, it's a very good point, but they have known that there's going to be a change of government. They have anticipated this, and they've been at least incorporating new growth forecasts. They've been looking at the level of inflation. They have said they can do a sketchier forecast, but they can do one. The Treasury has decided not to. These numbers exist. The Treasury is not going to publish them. And that, to my mind, throws such a question over any costings that we are going to get today.
Because presumably if the numbers were in their favour, they'd publish them.
Yeah, well, having any independent assessment of what this is going to cost, it's all well and good for, this is marking your own homework. I know it's an overused cliche, but this is saying, I'm going to help people, it's going to cost X amount, but don't worry, the markets can handle it. You need an independent assessment.
But in terms of helping people who aren't on an income, I say a lot of these measures help. If you've got an income, you'll feel a benefit. How do you then gauge something fiscally that isn't just a handout, then, to help those people at the bottom end of the scale? Are you saying the handouts are what we need?
I think targeted handouts, but not handouts to the general population. But we know that with inflation at 10%, and inflation may come down a little bit, or it may not hit the peaks with this new energy price freeze, but we're still seeing inflation that's going beyond the realm of energy. The people who are going to suffer the most are not necessarily us, and there needs to be something tied in, perhaps to the universal credit.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, the best way, obviously, of targeting help for people is to means test them, but that takes time and costs a lot of money.
It does, but we already have a system in there called universal credit. It isn't perfect, and in fact, Kwasi Kwarteng has hinted that he's going to tighten that up a little bit. So it may mean that the most vulnerable have even more difficulty accessing funds.
And it doesn't help pensioners, for instance, people who already own their homes.
Well, absolutely. I think that there's another debate to have about how much help pensioners may need. Pension payouts are pegged toward inflation. There will be pensioners who are suffering, and hopefully they are caught in the existing benefit system. But a lot of, I think, what is being announced is helping the very pensioners that got Liz Truss and her team into office. This budget feels like it's aimed at the 82,000 Conservative Party members who got Liz Truss where she is now.
Oh, see, that's interesting.
Sorry, it sounds terribly cynical.
Well, it does. Yes, it does. I mean, we've both been saying we were sort of looking forward to this budget just to see what was going to happen to benefit the nation. And you seem to be saying, well, actually, you don't think it is.
It feels a little bit like Liz Truss has looked at Ronald Reagan and looked at the political benefits that came to him and has said, well, there we go, there's a model. But they're very, very different things.
It's a different world now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when Ronald Reagan implemented his tax cuts in 1981, remember, interest rates in the U.S. were in double digits because of what you said earlier, Stephen. This could well be inflationary. I don't think anyone in this country wants to see interest rates at double digits.
No.
I mean, I watch a lot of American news when I get home. I binge on it. And they are just as obsessed with this very conundrum as we are, if not more so. I mean, how are we doing compared to other countries? Why are we looking at the way other countries are seeking to solve this problem? Have we got a better idea than them, or are there some good ideas out there that we should be learning from?
Oh, everybody missed the really big good idea, and this I won't put the blame at governments. Central banks really missed a trick. Central banks for so long, and central banks across the world, excepting, say, Japan, which is a different story, let's put that aside, have said inflation's transitory, don't worry, it's just energy, completely forgetting that energy isn't just what we use to heat our homes. We use it to fertilize fields. We use it to transport goods from place to place. So central bankers spent a year saying, transitory, it's not going to permeate the rest of the economy. Well, they were very, very wrong. So that was sort of the original sin. And that means fiscally, government spending has to sort of catch up with the first mistake that was made, which was not looking at interest rates a lot earlier.
OK, Laurie.
Please bring me back so I can say something happy sometime.
Yes.
I feel
well, please tell us when.
Honestly, I feel so gloomy.
Tell us when there will be happy news. It would be good to have it, wouldn't it?
Laurie Led, good to see you as always. Thank you very much indeed. Well, this week we've heard the support that businesses, charities and public sector organisations are going to get from the government in relation to their energy bills from October. Plus, of course, we are seeing that increase in the interest rates.
And of course today all eyes are on that mini-budget, 9:30, which the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, will spell out how the government plans to boost the economy and cut taxes as the UK faces a cost of living crisis and the prospect of a recession. Our national reporter Theo Chikomba reports.
The cost of living's had an impact on people from all walks of life, including those in business serving us every day. But high energy bills have forced some to make difficult decisions.
So this week we've already heard support that's being offered to small businesses, organisations like churches, community centres and more, and of course that change in the interest rate. But today the focus is on the budget and what the government is going to do going forward during a time where pockets are being squeezed.
People seem to think that the energy crisis started escalating around the time of the invasion of Ukraine, but actually it started well back into last year.
Grappling with increasing bills is something restaurant owners like Louise have had to deal with for a while. She says this week's announcement will reduce their bills by about a third.
As a business, you do have to plan ahead, think about what you're going to be doing this winter and next year. Do you think that these announcements will help your business going forward?
You know, things were tough for hospitality even before COVID, and now obviously we've all had 2 years of COVID, and now with all of this, I think really the government needs to take some massively radical steps towards making things easier for people to operate on the high street. So the things we would mostly favour is obviously a reduction or even complete removal of the business rates, and also a VAT reduction as well. That's widely seen in hospitality as the thing that needs to happen now.
Prime Minister Liz Truss has been meeting with world leaders in the US this week. She says the government understood the huge pressure businesses, charities and public sector organisations faced with bills. Meanwhile, Labour's Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds said there were still questions about how much this will cost and who will pay for it. While some welcome the emergency cover from the government starting this October, industry experts warn further support may be needed after this winter. Theo Chikomba, GB News.
And Theo's in Northampton for us now. Morning, Theo.
Good morning.
So what have you learned?
So this morning, yeah.
No, I was just going to say, what have people locally been telling you?
Yes, well, good morning. I thought you were going to ask me a question there, but I interrupted. Apologies. But this morning, I'm at Northampton Active. So if you can see just behind me, it is a white water centre just on the edge of town. And this week, I have spent some time speaking to business owners who've been telling me about their energy bills going up. But of course, that announcement was made for them just a couple of days ago. And yesterday, we had that interest rate increase as well, which we were expecting, which was pushed forward from last week as well. And today, we are going to be hearing a mini budget, not a full budget, not as many policies in a bigger budget, but this is a mini budget. But some are saying this is a big moment for them to see how they can plan ahead, not just businesses, but people, you know, at home with their families so they can plan ahead. Interestingly, about this place here in Northampton Active, since around Easter, they started helping those families who normally their children get free school meals, and here they were offering those meals during Easter and of course the summer holiday, which has just gone past. And some of those people are still coming here, so they are offering that to families here in the local area. But for them as a business, today is a moment where they'll find out how they can also, as a company, move forward with some of those measures we're also going to be hearing. And of course, we have been hearing potentially changes in stamp duty as well. But the government say this is a moment where potentially they can grow the economy, but it's going to come at a cost. And as we've heard in my report earlier, Labour asking about how this will be paid for.
Indeed, Theo, thank you.
And GB News' Alice Porter is in New Malden for us this morning. Good morning there, Alice. What is New Malden telling us? What are they telling you? Hi.
Hi there. Well, it's been called a mini budget, but it's going to have massive implications for small businesses. And I'm here in Morden speaking with one small business owner, John Merriman. Thank you very much for letting me come to your lovely coffee shop. Thank you for the tea at your lovely coffee shop, Metronome. First, what are your kind of fears and hopes, I guess, for this mini budget we're expecting?
All the things that we're hearing so far is that this looks quite radical, and for us as a small business, we are trying to hold on to stability, trying to make sure that the business is stable for our teams, for our suppliers, for our customers. And with so many changes all the time, I'm hoping that what we see is a bit more stability, though I'm nervous that what we're hearing is that this looks quite radical.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the radical aspects. I mean, tax cuts sounds great. A cut in corporation tax. I mean, your business could surely benefit from that.
Yeah, we will. Corporation tax is expensive, but bizarrely we pay 0 on our business rates, so which makes no sense. I would rather pay a little bit more consistently on our business rates and know that corporation tax could come down a little bit, because it is very, very expensive for a small business like this.
And how are you finding your energy bills at the moment? Because we've got this beautiful coffee shop here, very much in action today, but I know behind me along here we've got a fantastic recording studios, and that's sort of part of your business as well. So I imagine your energy bills are pretty high, but there's, I suppose, good news coming in from the government that you'll have that sort of cap for 6 months. What are your sort of thoughts about that in terms of businesses having that extra support?
For us here, our energy bill for electricity alone in here in February was $260 a month. Now it's over 1,000 each month. So to start capping it now is of no use to us. That is already astronomical and unsustainable. And the same with the studio, even more so. This is the 6 months cap. Again, this isn't about stability for the long haul. This is a short-term plaster that will help us plan for a few months. But I want to be able to have a place that's stable for all of our clients and all of our workers for the future.
Yeah, and I guess this is a smaller business, so would sort of benefit from it more. But I guess the question is, with larger businesses also having the cap for 6 months, that's something that some people may say, well, actually, they should be paying more.
Yeah, for me, trickle down has never worked, and right now this isn't the season, even on a micro level here, for me to say, well, if I get more, then I'm okay, and then hopefully it'll trickle down. When you see it on that level, on the micro level, it doesn't work on the big scale either. So paying the big bosses more, it doesn't trickle down, and we've known that from the past. So it's sad that looks like that's a proposal.
And so for you, I think for what you're sort of saying, the overwhelming sort of priority is having consistency. And I suppose if we look at, say, national insurance, to have had that brought in so recently, then that we know as of yesterday that's now changing. That, I suppose, some people will welcome that, but that is not quite chiming with the consistency that you're wanting for you as an individual and also as a business.
Yeah, totally. Any change here is difficult to manage. We're trying to make sure that our prices are consistent. Milk has gone up 5 times this year already, and we've been told by our supplier it will go up at least once more before the end of the year. So that's just milk. You know, coffee the same. They've had a bad crop the year before, but then coffee imports have gone up. So all of our costs have gone up. Everything's going up. So all we need is consistency. And the government has been so unsettled for so long, and we've had so many changes that as a small business owner and as I've networked with lots of the local businesses, the big word that we're looking for is consistency. And so far, I haven't seen that.
Well, John, thank you so much for speaking to me and letting me come along to your lovely coffee shop today. I think that gives a flavour of how some business owners are feeling in South London, that there may be radical changes coming in today, but it is the consistency that so many people are wanting after, of course, a very difficult couple of years.
OK, Alice, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. I can almost smell the coffee. I can certainly hear the coffee machine roaring away in the background. It sounds really nice.
Doesn't it? Interesting view, because we were saying about this budget looks like it could benefit those who are earning, but not necessarily those who aren't. Linda says taxpayers need a break, not benefit claimants. We get out of bed every day in all weathers to earn what these people claim in benefits, if you include full housing benefit and council tax exemption. They still need help, Linda. They still need help, but I mean...
And not all non-earners
are people getting benefits. And there are a lot of pensioners getting in touch saying, what about us? We're just sitting here. And it is difficult. Frank says, no mention of the triple kick on pensions yet. If this is not restored, they can forget about winning the next election. And that's what I think is the interesting thing, is that they've got to take measures this morning that will actually increase their popularity, surely.
Yeah, well...
Because that election's going to happen within 18 months to 2 years.
Sean says, what would help my family would be trust making it possible for married couples to give each other their tax-free allowance. The husband, works, my wife stays at home with the kids. It would be a lifesaver.
Yes, it certainly would.
Ooh,
but that is utopia, you know?
Yeah.
Whenever a government actually starts to recognise the asset of the one stay-at-home parent, I think that would be better for families generally, because at least you'd be able to afford for one parent to stay at home. It would save you on childcare then, but you need some sort of recognition that that person staying at home is contributing to society and actually needs a bit of help.
Yeah.
Whether it's the man or the wife or whatever.
Yeah, that would be... I mean...
we've been talking about it.
That would be very expensive. That would be very expensive, though, wouldn't it? It's on about doubling your husband's tax-free allowance, in effect,
It
on
would
that.
be expensive, but it would help people. It would help them straight away and in all sorts of ways, and it empowers the stay-at-home parent.
Yes, I'm all for a bit of stay-at-home parenting, but anyway, I don't have children, so it's easy for me to say.
What about stay-at-home cooking?
Well, air fryers.
So much about these air fryers.
Air fryers. Val says, I have an air fryer. You can roast a joint. I've done beef, pork, chicken in less time than an oven. Best thing I ever bought.
Wow. Rosemary in East Sussex adds, in all the discussions about saving money on cooking, I have not heard mention of the pressure cooker. Yes, brilliant. Stews, pot roasts, steamed puddings, etc. can be cooked on the hob at a fraction of the time. I have used one throughout my 52 years of marriage. The trouble is I'm terrified of them. Have you ever used one?
No.
They're terrifying.
Chrissy says, surprised you haven't got an air fryer. This is to me. I bought one in Lidl about 3 months ago. Best buy I've done for a while and don't regret it. Cooking time is Cooking
time is cut.
Sorry, my accent's slipping out. Cooking time is cut in half. If you want some chips, they take half an hour in the oven, 15 minutes in the air fryer.
Apparently air-fried chips are the best ever.
Apparently. I don't know.
I cannot believe that as a gadget nut, you have not got one of these things.
See, I don't really...
I think it is absolutely incumbent upon you now to test
very
drive
possibly.
one.
I'll tell you what it is. It's because they're called fryers, and I don't tend to fry things.
But you put I think in some of them you don't even put the tiniest amount of oil.
No. So...
No, I'm just being told you don't put any in the new ones.
So there you go.
I really do think it's your duty.
Well, I was Googling, but you see, you're looking at about £100.
No, not all of them. Some of them are quite less than that.
So, it's a lot of money to fork out, isn't it?
Should Stephen do it in the...
For research?
Consumer research for all of us.
I'd rather go 50-50 on it. Keep it at my house.
It's not a bad idea.
Well...
I think this is consumer journalism.
Well, is it?
Yeah.
Expensive.
But I could do with a chip. It'd be nice to have a few...
Nice to have some healthy chips. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, we could bring one in here if you just plug them in. It's not like cooking, is it? Well, except that it is cooking. We could do
some
here.
chips. Yeah.
OK, I think we'll work on this for you.
We'll see what we can do. Anyway, it is 8:31. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines. Councils are calling on the PM to honour her £13 billion promise to plug social care funding. The Local Government Association says £6 billion is urgently needed to help stabilise the market and give people the care they need. All follows the government's announcement that it's scrapping the national insurance levy, which would have helped pay for social care and tackle the NHS backlog.
The housing charity Shelter says 1 in 7 private tenants in England had a rent hike in the previous month. The survey also found that nearly a third said they're spending at least half their household income on rent. And 30% report being behind or constantly struggling to pay their rent.
And the new survey shows a quarter of people say they're now less likely to prepare a Sunday roast because of the energy costs. A third also say they've stopped buying takeaways. 31% eating out less often. Almost a fifth claim they no longer switch the oven on at all. Something that's just occurred to me.
Oh.
So if you're doing chips, right, in your air fryer, so you slice up your potato, do your chips, do you have to blanch the chips first? you have to boil them first, or will it cook them through?
I have no idea.
Yeah, GBViews at gbnews.uk. Let us know
Quick
how to do the chips. That's what we want to know. It's stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's practical advice, isn't it, that? We've got lots more to come, including the latest updates, of course, on that mini-budget an hour away. First of all, the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Compared with yesterday, today's looking brighter for many. There'll be some sunshine out there. Still a few showers about, but the wettest weather will be confined to the far southeast, where a cold front is currently trying to clear, but it's making slow progress. That's the front that brought some heavy rain across central areas during yesterday, and it's still bringing some wet weather, the rain having broken up into showers, but still some heavy downpours expected throughout much of the day across East Anglia and the southeast of England. A lot of cloud through southern areas as well, but brighter skies further north, a marked contrast here compared with recent days. Still some showers breaking out, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England primarily, but in between, in that sunshine, it won't feel too unpleasant. Temperatures reaching 16 to 20 Celsius. Now into the evening, and the rain continues on and off across parts of the far southeast. There could be some heavy, even thundery downpours for a time, but elsewhere, most places will see clear spells. Still some showers trickling into western shores as well as the North Sea coast. However, inland, mostly dry, clear spells and temperatures dipping into the mid to high single figures. So a fresh start to the weekend, but a bright start for many. For most, we're going to see sunny spells continuing throughout Saturday. There'll still be some showers coming into the east and the west coast, and a few developing inland across central areas during the afternoon. Away from the showers, though, there'll be some sunny spells. However, heavy rain won't be too far away. That will remain close to the far southeast, and it'll be quite breezy and cool here as well. Temperatures by and large into the mid to high teens. So a cool day expected, and then on Sunday, after a bright start, a band of heavy rain and strong winds spreads in from the north through Sunday night and into Monday, and that will introduce colder air for the start of next week.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News Channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Yes.
8:37. Good morning to you.
What's funny about it being 8:37?
Well, nothing. It's just all we're getting is messages about F.
I know. We've got
My
F
friend
violence.
James just sent me a message saying, you can get one from Asda for £25. I mean, it's...
Crikey.
I mean, it's just like...
How How can we be so out of touch that we don't know what
I
an
don't know,
air
though.
fryer is?
Trish did send me a tweet. She's saying she bought one, £200, hates it. Sits in the back of a cupboard.
Well, hang on a minute. Colin in Suffolk says, I'm 80 years old and I find using a Ninja air fryer has saved me on my electric bills, cutting them in half. Initial cost was about £200, but it has more than paid for itself.
Yeah. Rona says, our daughter purchased an air fryer for us for Christmas 2 years ago. Our first reaction was, where are we going to put that?
Well, yes.
But we have to say it's the best present we've ever had.
Oh, this is fascinating. I mean, this shocked me. Anne says, the air fryer is a great thing. I cooked sausages and roast potatoes last night in mine, 20 minutes from cold. Perfectly crispy potatoes, sausages perfectly done. I can't quite get my head around that, but got to try it.
Shax says, the one I bought has 2 separate fryers and can easily cook a meal for 4. You should get one. P.S. Love your outfit.
Oh, thank you.
Actually, I love that outfit.
Is that to you, then?
No,
I
that's
like
to
your
you.
shirt.
That's to you.
I like your shirt, but there you are. That's another concern.
There you go.
And in Milton Keynes, I want something for pensioners today. Tax cuts, stamp duty and national insurance reductions do nothing for those of us on pensions, spending 80% of our income on fuel bills.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to wait and see, Anne, aren't we? It's going to be interesting. Let's have a look at the front pages. Of course, the mini-budget is on most of them. The Times says Kwasi Kwarteng is preparing to announce £50 billion in tax cuts to stimulate economic growth. That would be more than we're expecting.
Meanwhile, the Daily Mail says the Chancellor will announce the biggest tax cuts in 30 years, !
The Guardian has the Bank of England's warning that the UK is in recession and interest rates may go up.
It's horrible seeing that word, recession, isn't it? Shall we go through the papers now? Joining us this morning, author and academic Joanna Williams and GBNews business and economics editor, guru today, Liam Halligan. Hello. Hi.
No pressure.
No pressure. Well, we'll start with the mini-budget, which is going to be announced, hopefully, under an hour from now.
It's worth, yeah, the Daily Mail, most of the papers going on the mini-budget. The Daily Mail's angle is the biggest tax cuts for 30 years. We're expecting to see corporation tax frozen at 19%. We know national insurance is coming down. That 1.25 percentage point increase that Rishi Sunak implemented, that's being reversed. That's worth about 300 quid to the average working household. I wanted to say, though, I've just been checking my spreadsheets and graphs, and there seems to be something going on in the currency markets. The pound is under quite serious pressure. It's just gone on under $1.12 against the world's major reserve currency for the first time since the mid-1980s. It's been like $1.20, $1.25 for most of this year. It went below $1.15 a few days ago. It's now below $1.12, so quite serious deterioration in the pound. I think what's going on is that the markets know that a theme is emerging. A lot of commentators in Britain, a lot of institutions in Britain are countering the government narrative. They're saying the government is borrowing too much to pay for lockdown, to pay for this energy price cap that we're going to hear about today. The government is spending too much, but at the same time cutting taxes. When you cut taxes, the government's argument is that in the end that grows the economy, you get more revenue, but in the short term you may get even less revenue, making the public finances deteriorate, meaning it costs the British government more to borrow. I don't think we're anywhere near crisis mode yet, but it certainly won't make for comfortable viewing for the Prime Minister and the Chancellor ahead of this mini-budget to watch what's going on the currency markets at the moment.
I mean, I have to say, I really hope they can hold their nerve, because it just seems to me that, as we've discussed earlier, this is a gamble, but it's a gamble on growing the British economy. It's a gamble on kind of dynamite, it seems to me, kind of really putting a booster rocket up and going for growth. And I think that long term, that's what we need. If we're going to become a prosperous country, be a prosperous country, we need to actually grow the pie. We need to have a better, bigger economy all round. So, there's so much pressure coming from kind of Treasury orthodoxy, economic commentators, obviously with the exception of our friend Liam at the end there, to kind of rein this in, to stop it, to go back to the austerity we've been familiar with for the past decade. I hope they hold their nerve.
But what about, we had Laurie Laird on before, and she's saying, within all of this, benefits, she thinks, are people who are better off, but nothing to help the people who are really struggling with the cost of living crisis.
I mean, I think the thing when you have tax cuts, obviously the more tax you pay, the more you are going to benefit from a tax cut, and I think that's just a kind of basic law. I mean, clearly we do need to keep an eye on benefits and make sure that people are not dropping out the bottom to such extent that they're not being able to afford to heat and eat their houses and maintain a basic standard of living.
Also, and it's worth saying this, I haven't heard any broadcaster say this. Obviously, I can't monitor all channels all the time. I haven't heard any broadcaster explain that even though the Chancellor is reversing that hike in national insurance, he is maintaining the previous Chancellor's raising of the threshold where national insurance starts. That directly helps people on lower incomes because where they start paying national insurance is higher up the income scale. On the energy price cap, I completely agree with Laurie that if you have an energy price cap that keeps the wholesale energy price the same for everybody, then the more energy you use, if you live in a big house, the more you will save. On the other hand, if you try and target the help, in the middle of the income scale, there'll be a cliff edge where people are helped and then suddenly they're not helped. And you will have millions of people squealing that it's deeply, deeply unfair. There's always a trade-off in economics between the universality of help and the targeting of help. And targeting of help is always very, very complicated. To do something quickly, you just got to help everyone.
I wonder if one thing we might see this morning is the announcement of a cut in VAT. Now, we know that would help the least well-off in society because they spend a much bigger proportion of their daily income on kind of day-to-day living, on living expenses. Now, if there is a cut in VAT, that would be something to keep an eye out for because that probably would help people who are struggling.
How do you reckon, Lou? Is that a possibility?
I do think it's a possibility. I think Joanna's onto something there. I think Kwasi Kwarteng, he will be looking for headlines this afternoon and tomorrow, comparing him with Nigel Lawson in 1988, who implemented a very radical tax-cutting budget. A budget, Stephen, which at the time was so controversial, even during his budget statement in the House of Commons, MPs completely throwing parliamentary convention to the wind, got up and heckled him and got thrown out because they didn't like these tax cuts. I'd also say that this energy support package, while it does include £400 grant for all households, which of course will help the well-off more, it also includes special targeted help for people receiving certain benefits that's bigger than that £400. It's more like £650, plus additional benefits for the disabled and those with mobility difficulties, because they often use more energy on equipment that helps them in their everyday lives. Look, this is not about perfect systems. There's lots to criticise here. This is about the art of the possible. After a hiatus in government, it's almost 80 days since Boris Johnson resigned as Prime Minister, during which a lot of the public got really concerned about making ends meet. That's why the government's moved fast.
Well, you've got to move fast. In about a quarter of an hour, you're back here.
But have a bowl of shreddies.
With a mini-budget special. And it's going to be very, very interesting. You're going to be furiously writing down as the Chancellor speaks, aren't you? Good luck with that, Liam.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you.
And I'm sure we've got lots of people joining in with lots of questions.
I'm sure they will. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Just a quick one from Alan in Southampton. It says, many years ago, the government issued a minimum living wage. Why do they not apply this to the old age pension? There you go. It's not a bad idea.
Well,
I mean, there's all these ideas. You know what? All these ideas come through. There's some really good ones that you have. But there you go. Re-VAT, David in Winsford says, before we joined the EU, we had RPM, retail price maintenance.
Oh, I remember
just another
that.
Tax. Yeah.
So many different ideas. You can only imagine the rows that must have been had around the cabinet room table, can't you?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because there are fundamental differences of opinion.
Yeah.
It'll be very interesting to see what they do in the end come up with.
It will. But look, don't go anywhere. We're having a change of tack, just slightly, in a couple of minutes. We've got our very own People's Poll and all the results.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Amidst everything that's going on, I want to bring you some good news. Sue in Winchester says, my good news I would like to share is that after my 2 recent major operations, they've been successful and you are helping me to heal.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much.
Glad you're doing all right. Thank you, Sue.
I've got lots of comments about air fryers, which we'll get back to you on. And also about where you leave your keys. You can't find your car keys.
Oh,
we'll talk about those in a couple of moments. Right now, we've got time for our People's Poll.
Well, joining us now is academic and professor of politics, Matt Goodwin. Morning to you, Matt.
Morning.
So what's this poll about this week?
Well, we've got the big mini-budget today, big gamble economically that Liz Truss is making, that she can hold that Conservative electorate together by lowering tax and reducing the size of the state. But there's also another gamble the Conservative Party have been taking over the last couple of years. The first is around migration. We've seen, of course, Boris Johnson's big change on migration, a much more liberal approach to migration from outside of Europe, a more restrictive approach to migration from inside of Europe. And we asked people, actually, to what extent would you support a reduction in overall levels of migration from the current level of around 250,000 a year? That's net migration, the number coming in minus the number going out.
So legal and illegal?
This is legal forms of migration.
Oh, so this is legal migration.
There's a cap on the legally.
Yeah, this is. We're not
migration.
talking small boats. We're talking about legal forms of migration in and out. It's currently 250,000 a year, so 250,000 more people are coming in than are leaving. And we said, well, how would you feel about having an upper limit of 100,000 a year? Because we know that support for reducing migration was key to Brexit. It was key to Boris Johnson's win in 2019. And you find that overall, the general public break 40% in support of that, 21% opposing, the rest saying they're not sure. But if you look at the 2019 Conservatives, about 71% of those voters are saying they would like to see overall net migration come down to about 100,000, which of course was David Cameron's pledge. You might remember when Cameron said that we should have net migration in the tens of thousands rather than the hundreds.
Yeah, but everyone said at the time, and when that was out, you can't put figures on it. I thought the whole point of taking back control of our borders, that we could bring in or allow in as many people as we needed.
We can be flexible.
So I think that was certainly the gamble that was made at the time. Whether or not the British public are supportive of the very high levels of migration that we are going to see in the years ahead, I think that's an interesting question that is going to remain hovering above British politics for the next few years. But to me, it's pretty clear evidence, at least, that most of the Conservative voters, a lot of Leave voters as well, are saying still that actually, if push came to shove, they'd rather have much lower overall levels of migration.
Can we talk about bankers' bonuses? Because this is something that gets steam coming out of my ears. We were asked in this poll, the government is planning to scrap the current cap on bankers' bonuses, which it argues will help drive economic growth. To what extent, if at all, do you support this policy? And 52% are supporting it.
No, oppose it.
Oh, sorry, opposing it. Yes, you're right. Yeah,
only 12% of the country currently is saying they support. No, well, Liz Truss, of course, famously has said at the beginning of her premiership, she's a Prime Minister that's willing to make the difficult decisions and be an unpopular Prime Minister if that's what's necessary. When you look at this policy of taking the cap off bankers' bonuses, and essentially this is about attracting bankers back into London, getting them out of Paris, out of Frankfurt, getting them back into Brexit Britain, signalling to the financial community things are different here, right? So there's a logic behind the policy. In terms of public opinion, what people are really thinking, however, here's the challenge for Liz Truss. Only 12% of people are saying they think this is a good idea.
Well, but that's because, isn't it? And I know some of the figures do seem sickening at times, but people think that means bankers are going to be making more money. Well, it isn't actually the case, is it? Because when the bonuses were capped, the salaries went up.
That's true.
So actually, it's not going to make any difference to what they're earning.
So politically, I think where this feeds into this new landscape that we're in now, which is a very serious cost of living crisis, we've got an economic slowdown, we have got a lot of people, as your viewers know, as you know, you're hearing from them, who are struggling day to day. I think the optics of this policy announcement aren't great for the government, that they're challenging for Liz Truss, but it's going to also, I think, hand a bit of an opportunity to Keir Starmer and Labour, who are going to be saying, actually, is this about being on the side of the ordinary man and woman?
This is the problem with politics at the moment, isn't it? That it is about the optics rather than the reality. I mean, the reality is most bankers will not make any more money if the cap is lifted, because their base salary will probably be reduced, and then they'll get more in a bonus. So it's not good. But the optics don't show that. But that's not the point, is it? We should be looking at reality, not optics.
I think as well we've got a parallel point to that, which is what was Brexit also about? It was about levelling up the country. It was about reviving areas outside of London and the South East. I think if you were to look at the symbolism of this policy, it's very much about the City of London. It's very much about helping financial services in London, right? Which is fine. Our economy depends heavily on financial services. I can understand the case for that. But at some point, I would say this government now, in the next few weeks, has to come out with a serious message for the North East, for the North West, for the Midlands, for the Yorkshire, because if they lose that levelling up promise, they may end up losing some of those voters.
And very, very quickly, because we're just about to run out of time, you said when you walked into the studio, when the pound looks as dodgy as it's just been reported to be looking, it's shaking, the government in charge usually loses the next general election.
Well, historically, look at the examples we have. 1967, 1976, Black Wednesday, the Conservatives, John Major. Every Prime Minister who's presided over even a sniff of a run on the pound has gone on to lose the next general election. So this is going to be a challenging time for Liz Truss. We know that. We also found briefly that so far, there has been no bounce in the polls for Liz Truss. That may change after this week, all the announcements today.
It may change after this morning.
We shall see. Matt, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. That is it from us, but we've got the budget special in just a moment.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Compared with yesterday, today's looking brighter for many. There'll be some sunshine out there. Still a few showers about, but the wettest weather will be confined to the far southeast, where a cold front is currently trying to clear, but it's making slow progress. That's the front that brought some heavy rain across central areas during yesterday, and it's still bringing some wet weather, the rain having broken up into showers, but still some heavy downpours expected throughout much of the day across East Anglia and the southeast of England. A lot of cloud through southern areas as well, but brighter skies further north, a marked contrast here compared with recent days. Still some showers breaking out, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England primarily, but in between, in that sunshine, it won't feel too unpleasant. Temperatures reaching 16 to 20 Celsius. Now into the evening, and the rain continues on and off across parts of the far southeast. There could be some heavy even thundery downpours for a time. But elsewhere, most places will see clear spells. Still some showers trickling into western shores as well as the North Sea coast. However, inland, mostly dry, clear spells and temperatures dipping into the mid to high single figures. So a fresh start to the weekend, but a bright start for many. For most, we're going to see sunny spells continuing throughout Saturday. There'll still be some showers coming into the east and the west coast, and a few developing inland across central areas during the afternoon. Away from the showers, though, there'll be some sunny spells. However, heavy rain won't be too far away. That will remain close to the far southeast, and it'll be quite breezy and cool here as well. Temperatures by and large into the mid to high teens. So a cool day expected, and then on Sunday, after a bright start, a band of heavy rain and strong winds spreads in from the north through Sunday night and into Monday, and that will introduce colder air for the start of next week.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
on radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
A very good morning and welcome to this GB News Beat the Squeeze special as the Chancellor prepares to unveil that huge package of tax cuts and borrowing. Well, Kwasi Kwarteng has been in his job less than 3 weeks, but will shortly unveil a so-called mini budget that's expected to have a maxi impact. The Chancellor has promised 2 rabbits out of the hat, but one Treasury source this morning said there'll be more rabbits than Watership Down. We're here to try to trap those rabbits and see what they have to say. Our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with his calculator and a video wall later to explain, and GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood to talk about the significant political gamble that's taking place today. Well, this is the scene in Downing Street where Liz Truss has been holding a cabinet meeting already with her Chancellor. And it's the end, of course, of a busy week in politics, culminating in this moment that will set the scene ahead of a general election that could come in less than 2 years, remember. The government hopes that tax cuts will help hard-pressed families, but it comes less than a day after the Bank of England whacked borrowers and mortgage holders with the biggest rise in interest rates in 14 years, or at least the highest rate in 14 years. They've warned there could be more to come too, with their assessment that the country may already be in recession. So how is this affecting households across the country? Our team of reporters out and about, speaking to those people about how they're trying to beat the squeeze. So you're watching this GB News special on the Chancellor's mini-budget, expected indeed in the next half hour. We'll bring you that live, along with all the build-up analysis. But first, a news update with Rhiannon.
Thank you, Mark. It's 2 minutes past 9. Your top stories in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor will unveil a package of tax cuts as part of his mini-budget this morning to limit the impact of soaring energy bills. Kwasi Kwarteng will pledge to turn the vicious cycle of stagnation into a cycle of growth as he sets out the government's plan for the UK economy. Market research company GfK says the mini-budget will be the first major opportunity to drive the economy and help rebalance household finances. Parliament will sit shortly to hear the details. Economics commentator Lowry Laird says the new measures need to apply to everybody to make a difference.
If all of the measures that we're going to see are pretty much aimed at people who already have money. So we're seeing a rollback in that NI contribution. Well, that's fine if you have a job, a little bit of a tax break there. If you don't have a job, it's not going to help a great deal. Getting rid of the cap on bankers' bonuses, that may make a difference on the margin. It may make it easier to hire people in the UK, but it's not going to make a big difference to the greater population.
Russian-backed officials in 4 occupied regions of Ukraine are holding self-styled referendums on joining Russia. The so-called votes are taking place over the next 5 days in Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson and Zaporizhia. They represent around 15% of Ukrainian territory. The referendums have been denounced as illegitimate by Ukraine and the West. Russia argues